Good evening, and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of the 10th of October 2023. The meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel. The most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. I wish to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Judy Bentley, the wife of former Town of Kentville Councillor Tony Bentley. Judy was a teacher and an active member of our community. Condolences have been sent on behalf of council and staff. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting package? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As Council Advisory Committee, CAC, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. I will remind members of council that we should continue to be mindful of our decision-making wheel. The council will be voting electronically on all motions except administrative, which will be by show of hands. Are there any conflict of interest issues that council should be aware of before the meeting commences? And the chair notes that we have quorum. We have been provided with a proposed agenda. We have a couple of changes to that agenda. Under new business, item 8A, please add Chief of Police. And under item in camera, please remove in camera land, as we will be holding a special meeting to discuss that matter following the meeting. And I do invite our members of the public, once we adjourn the CAC meeting, is that you are invited to remain for a special council meeting. Are there any further changes to the agenda? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I just have a question. The special meeting, don't you have to give 3 days' notice?
Unfortunately, we're not in a position to provide the 3 days' notice due to needing to get the matter done. And as you'll note in the MGA, it says that even if notice has not been given, that it is still a legal meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I have another item as well.
Certainly.
Since you brought up the MGA, I'm just trying to do my job here as an elected official, and at the last meeting there was conversation around the audit committee.
Councillor, our last meeting was a council meeting.
Right.
This is a committee meeting.
It is, but I just want to make a point, and if we could have a discussion on it. That
We cannot, because it is a council matter. It's not a committee matter. However, we can put it and will put it on the agenda
Okay.
for the council meeting.
That would be great.
I already have a document prepared for that.
Okay. For
The council meeting,
on
which,
the audit?
Yes, that's
How
correct.
do you know what I'm going to mention?
I don't know what,
You're telepathic.
no, actually, I'm not Councillor Zabian. However, I did have a document prepared for our last council meeting, which did not go to, it went in the package, however, did not go to council. It was removed at the last minute, and that document will be provided again.
Okay.
So there will be 2 matters under audit committee, one at your request,
Okay.
and the one coming from the audit committee.
Okay, that
All
would be
right.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. I don't know whether I want it added to the agenda or leave enough room during the Engineer and Public Work Director's report. I don't think we had fulsome discussion on the RFD that was presented at the council meeting, and I understand it was at the council meeting. But this meeting is where we do our discussions on things that do come to council. Can we add that to old business? Can we add a spot at the end of Director Bell's report to speak and ask questions about it?
I'm going to say that the preference would be to permit our director to provide his report and have the discussion at that point. And if you wish to make a motion at that time, it can go from committee to council without issue.
Okay, thank you.
CAO, did you have anything to add on that matter?
No, I think it's relevant that we wait for Dr. Bell's report.
Yep.
That works? All right, so we do have two changes to our agenda, an addition and a deletion. If I could have a motion to approve the agenda as modified. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And for the second? Councillor York, thank you. All those in favor? Oh,
I have a question, sorry.
okay.
Thank you. So are we having an in-camera session at all?
The in-camera will be during the special meeting.
Thank you.
So, yes, as that needs to be resolved tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Pardon? We're calling it one. All those in favor of the agenda as amended?
I'm sorry, did you say you invited the public to stay for the,
Yes, I did.
so it's not in camera, or?
Yes, there's going to be two phases to it, yes.
Okay, so one part with them and then.
Exactly, yes. All those in favor of this agenda? Those opposed, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, you have been provided with the Council Advisory Committee meeting minutes from September 10th. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red. Are there any changes? None? All right, good to go on that one. We have one presentation this evening, and Russ Sanchez is here to present on the Portal Youth Program. Russ, the floor is yours. And since your last appearance here, we have this fancy new podium that moves to be the exact height that you need it to be.
Earlier I asked, does that mean because I'm short, it adjusts, but that's great.
No.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to provide an update, Mayor Snow and councillors. I appreciate it. And I would say that, in a sense, this is less of an ask and more of an update, and I hope a piece of encouragement. I bring this update at a time that we're probably in the very worst moment in terms of a housing crisis in the province. I'm sure everyone around the room is well aware of that. And yet, I would say, from a front line and also in working closely with the province on several issues, a lot of encouraging pieces because there's so many moving parts. And it's almost impossible to capture it. So I thought what would be valuable tonight is to encourage you about the role that Kentville can play in being a compassionate community that takes action. And there's a few examples I have here. And I want to start by saying that the work that we've been doing, not just our agency, but multiple agencies with the Recreation Department of the town of Kentville, really sets a good model for what could be done in many municipalities. And so I thought they don't maybe always know the inner workings of those things. And tonight I probably stand here, yes, representing the Portal, but also Valley Roots Housing Association, which is a recently formed organization, as well as Homeless No More, which is a movement and initiative to see homelessness end across the valley. I want to share with you sort of the lives of three young people that I've known for the last 6 to 10 years. One of them, I hate sticking to a script, but there was key things in here I don't want to miss. One of them is working and living a stone's throw from here. One of them is living nearby and is working. He's a fisherman now. He's got a family. And I would say he's, in his own way, really thriving. Many people would say is thriving. The third one, sadly, has died. And there's right now a police investigation in Halifax. It's an ongoing homicide investigation. But there's something interesting about all three. All three were severely challenged in the area of housing, but also connection. The one young man, I'm just going to call him T, always knew he had a place to connect. Incredible struggle with trauma, incredible struggle with addictions that still goes on today. And because of the support of many different agencies, but also the province of Nova Scotia and even the town of Kentville, this young man finally, after living a whole year in a shed in Kentville, is now housed really close by and doing well. The second guy that I said is now working. He's a fisherman and he's got a family. The thing that made a difference for him was a connection to a community of people, but also people believing that he had a place to contribute and to give. And some of you talked to him, some face-to-face encouraged him that this was his town, not just a place that would chase him down. I mean, this young man was actually one of the most successful drug dealers locally back when he was 18 years of age. Also, sad to say, with the police being present in some fashion, was very successful at break and enters in cars and homes and things like that. But he traded that life for a life where he began to contribute, had a safe place to live, could contribute to his community, to other youth in the community. And so it's a long story because that was 8 years ago, but today he is contributing. The third young person that sadly died in Halifax not that long ago was because he didn't have a connection. He didn't have a safe place to live. He ended up going to Halifax, living outside of Cole Harbour, built his own shelter, and sadly recently had died in the woods near that shelter. And he's a son of Kentville. So in all three of those cases, tragic, difficult, long-term journey, but in all three examples, all three of these young people experienced people reaching out with compassion, with grace, and also regular, consistent accountability for the steps that they said they wanted to take. And so why I bring up the three stories is Kentville is leading the way in a lot of ways right now that you may or may not be aware. And it's exciting, not always easy. And some of those things, I would say, have to do with your support for Rachel, who's at the table here, being involved with Homeless No More, but also now being more active with the Housing Action Plan and things like that. And supporting agencies like the Portal, Family Resource Center, Valley Community Learning Association, Open Arms, to share space, partner with projects, things like that. Like, that is so significant because you've got across the province of Alberta right now, especially with this housing crisis, nonprofit organizations are maxed out completely and overcapacitated or undercapacitated, I guess, overworked and undercapacitated. The province has been newly investing in strategies and funding, and you've seen funding increase for almost every agency that is providing social services in this town. And there's a rumor from the RCMP that when the weather gets cold, there's going to be 20 plus people that are living rough in Annapolis are going to cruise this way because they feel like there's services and support here. We're freaked out by that thought because there's already about 40 people living rough in some way now. So another 20 is going to tax us. But what I wanted to highlight was the fact that with the things that are done and the partnerships that are going on and the investment being made, and I think back to those three stories, are we going to be a community that in 10, 20, 30 years, that will be known as a place of compassion, a place that took action, a place that got to know that person that's homeless on the street, no matter what age they are, or took an extra step to change some bylaws or support things that were going on to make sure that there was land for affordable housing, or make sure there was, I've got a bit of a shopping list that I thought I'd share with you to inspire the way, other ways we could be supporting some of these agencies. A lot of these agencies, for example, don't have a lot of good policies around HR. They don't have a lot of knowledge and insights into community or organizational development, leadership training, board development, things like that. And it was through one of these collection of tables or one of these collection of organizations that somebody contacted IONS, for example, Impact Organization in Nova Scotia, and said, nonprofits across the valley are lacking these things, and they identified these things. IONS said, well, we can help provide that training, and so increase that capacity. So the things that I think and I want to encourage, oh, no, it's good I look down. 3 weeks ago, we had an incident in our supportive living home, which is like a block away from here or less. And there was a young person in distress, and it got really kind of out of hand. The staff called the Kentville police. Police came over. I'll tell you, there was a marked difference between their response today and what their response might have been 10 years ago. They partnered with the staff. They asked the staff what they needed. They handled this young person with compassion, They drove this young person from here to their aunt's place because we had to remove them from the supportive living home. Then they checked with the staff to see if this person could return. Then they drove back out to Port Williams to check that they were going to stay put and not bring back the stress and the conflict and sadly the violence back to that home. And I heard this debrief from our staff, and I went right over to Marty Smith and I said, Marty, tell me who the officers were, and could you commend them and thank them for a job well done? 10 years ago, it might not have been the same response. So something's changed. So I would say the things I want to encourage you about is the significant difference community policing is making, the significant difference that having a mental health worker through Ashley at the Kentville Police is making, and the partnership that brings. I could safely say that we're not criminalizing homelessness in Kentville. We're not treating people with mental health issues like they're second-class citizens or further marginalizing them. That's significant. That's my 9-minute warning, Jennifer. And then also the fact that there's room at the table to ask nonprofits what they need, whether it's space or whatnot. Some of the other things I thought could make a real difference is actually doing a bit of a project and asking those nonprofits that are taxed with their own resources or lack of resources, ask them things like, well, I did. I asked Ginger at Crystal's house, I said, have you ever had a break on your property taxes from the town of Kentville? She said, no. I said, has anyone ever approached you about a break on your property taxes in Kentville? She said, no. I said, oh, well, we need to do something about that. That was a few years ago. I haven't done anything about it. The other things asking, which this happens to the recreation department, does your group need space? Can we provide that space free of charge? For a struggling nonprofit that's small, that's significant because then they don't have to use other program dollars for rental. Looking at land and making sure that it can be used for affordable housing. Look at existing buildings. Right now we're searching throughout the valley because the province of Nova Scotia has a building acquisition program. They would supply the funds for a nonprofit to buy a building, renovate it, and then give us the operating dollars to provide supportive living for single moms, survivors of domestic violence, people with mental health issues, young offenders who can't be housed with the other folks we're housing, and also, did I say people with mental health issues? Oh, seniors. The two most hurting groups right now are families and seniors, and we need to do something about it. We need to provide supportive housing. So, Kentville, I would say take the lead. House everyone that needs to be housed, feed everyone that needs to be fed, and befriend everyone that is lonely or alone. You have the potential to lead the province an example of a partnership between the municipality and the province to tackle these very challenging issues. And I see signs of it happening. So I want to say thank you. And I want to say let's keep up the good work that we're doing together. And I think that at the end of the day, we will see a significant change. So thank you.
All right, Russ, thank you very much. That was very motivating. I will open the floor up for questions from members of council. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Russ.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. So I have just a couple of questions, comments. The first question would be, you did mention Ashley, the community crisis navigator. Do you think one person in that role is enough?
No.
Okay, that was quick, that was easy. You talk about a place of compassion here in Kentville, and I sort of want to know what that looks like when you talk about 60 people living, did you say rough? And I assume when you say rough, you mean they're homeless or they're vulnerable?
Campers,
Okay.
sheds.
Okay,
I wouldn't even say couch surfing. Those people at least have something.
okay.
Yeah, so it's a pretty significant number right now.
So when you say a place of compassion, what does that look like?
Well, if I bring back an issue that happened about, I'm guessing 5 years ago, remember the park benches?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when people started sitting on the park benches,
Mhm.
you had community members who complained
Yes, I remember.
because they were a bit afraid of the people sitting on the benches.
Mhm.
So we didn't accompany an initiative like that with a really strong public education campaign to talk about that.
Mhm.
And so I really think that's the next thing I want to emphasize is we have to educate people in ways that fight not in my backyard. And I think we could tackle a number of fronts with that.
Okay.
And so it's a pretty complex thing. But I remember, I forgot her name now. She told me about these two older women who were afraid of the youth that were sitting on this bench and hanging out outside of our old building across the street. And you know what she said to those two older, like elderly women? Did you ask them their names? Did you get to know them? She knew them all by name. So she wasn't nervous because she could stop and talk to them and say, what's your name? What do you need? And so that was the signs of a compassionate person asking, what's your name?
So I'll just share this story, and it's very quick. And I actually mentioned it to a staff member here at Town of Kentville the other day. I was going into the drugstore, and sometimes there's a number of folks that congregate around the drugstore, and I think there were maybe 4 or 5 of them. And I thought about walking around them or walking through them, and there was enough room to walk through them. So I made the conscious decision that I would walk through them. And I did, and I said, excuse me, and 3 of them said, certainly, miss. And so that was a lesson for me, and that's something that I just wanted to share because
It's a great example.
it's a great example, and it's a good lesson for me to have learned.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We live in a safe town. We work in a safe town. There's not violent crime here. So we can get to know people's names.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Russ. You're engaged with the province, and I'm wondering what the province is doing, because what I've heard over the last 7 years, when you've come to speak and stuff like that, we will always have a bit of a transient population, but a lot of what's being caused now is that the province has created the perfect storm where there's not enough housing. The existing housing, they have to charge so much in order to keep up with rising costs. New housing that's being built, when they know that they can get those peak prices, that's what they're building. And when you leave housing in the hands of the province, they can screw it up. So yes, we've got a job to do, but the province really has to turn things around.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, I'm okay that this is being recorded. Some people may not be happy with what I'm about to say. Government doesn't always communicate within government, and it's really frustrating when I can go to one department in government and ask for something, and they say, yeah, and they reference another department in government, and they make it sound like that same department's on board, and sadly they're not. I would say that the 2 big problem areas is a commitment from the Office of Mental Health and Addictions to actually have community-based mental health that is not your formal medical model, but actually outreach that's mental health related. That would be a significant change provincially. That's why things like what we do here is a great thing to expand on. The other thing is, and this is where I'm baffled and frustrated to no end. So we've got land now, we've got the right housing consultant to build housing units, and the province through municipal affairs and housing won't commit to deep subsidies. They talk about this equation that is about affordable housing, which is 80% of market value, but market value keeps going up. We need an array of options so that you have market and mixed developments, market, below market, so 80%, and then deeply affordable. And getting them to actually commit to that deeply affordable part is one of the biggest hindrances to nonprofits, like the 5 that are assembled here locally to build housing. Because if you can't operate the very housing that you build because you're rent for the people you want to build it for. So that cross communication. But I think if municipalities would also start speaking up and saying we've got local developers or local nonprofits that are willing to build, but if you don't provide the deep subsidies, that's so that the operations can actually balance. So those are the 2 biggest things I think the province could change. Not Department of Community Services. There's no other department right now doing as much about housing as they are. Significant things, moving children out of care and into viable options, and then also supporting and funding housing support workers and supportive living programs around the province and initiatives around homelessness. but for some reason, Municipal Affairs and Housing doesn't believe they have any kind of connection to the issue of homelessness, which is a misnomer. We could have a longer discussion on that one.
Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. First, I'm sorry about the loss of your friend. That's always difficult. Secondly, I'm wondering if the Kentville business community is sitting at tables with you, especially as we have conversations about being a welcoming and inclusive committee, or community rather, and conversations about what that might look like in a storefront versus a council table or an outreach organization such as yours. Are those groups sitting together as well?
I would say no, those bridges are there, they just need to be crossed.
Okay.
I think up to this point, if I was to think about the time I've spent with each agency locally that deal with housing, homelessness, and poverty, they've all been strained to the max that you don't have the time to go to another meeting. Only now, after 12 years, do I feel like I could actually attend a business meeting. Only now did we have the ability to form Valley Roots Housing, which is represented by Open Arms, VCLA, the Portal Community Inc., and Project Hope, and Kids Action. So they're all local. So that is the next step, I think. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Russ, I've got a couple things here that while you were talking. Do you remember back when we were talking about youth sharing homes with elderly people, and they would get a break on their rent, and and they would be
Yeah.
like they wouldn't be criminals going into like
Yeah.
a poor
have to
elderly
screen.
person's
Yeah.
Exactly. Did that ever come to fruition?
So yes, before COVID, we had about 19 active host homes. They weren't necessarily with seniors. They were with sort of people of all ages. And I would say it was successful maybe 60%. And I picked that out of the air, but I would say that that's what prompted us to pursue the province to get supportive living homes that we could staff, because some of the needs were too great.
Okay.
COVID killed that initiative, and it put a stop to it, kind of because of everything that was going on. So we're right now reassessing that and wanting to launch host homes, not just for youth, but for people of all ages, because there might be greater capacity to house someone in your home if they weren't a youth that you were nervous about, or if this youth needed rebuild skills, but maybe somebody that had a mental health issue that was being treated, or somebody with a disability. So we're now looking and talking about expanding it back in that way and relaunching it. But I would say it is successful for some youth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The other one is with regards to tax reduction. So the town of Kentville does have a policy whereby a not-for-profit can get a tax reduction from commercial to residential. So if you consider that our commercial rate is around $3.50 and our residential rate is $1.41, that's a nice break on taxes. And we have several of our not-for-profits downtown who do take advantage. So I'm going to say that it would behoove all of the not-profits downtown. And my finance director is looking at the bottom line as I'm saying this out loud. But we do have that policy in place, and I don't believe that we've ever turned down one of our not-for-profits.
Well, I'm going to start promoting it with those
Okay.
nonprofits.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to let you know, because I was hoping that Councillor York was going to give a plug for this, but the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities will be having a policing meeting at the beginning of November. It will be on the Tuesday, the first week of November, the Tuesday, at 1 p.m. And people are invited to attend. And at that meeting, we the town of Kentville, will be presenting
Oh,
our
good.
crisis navigator, because I'm going to tell you that there's not a meeting that we don't go to where we don't brag about this. And so I'm going to say that our bragging has caught on, and they've asked
Good.
us to make a presentation. So we will be there with bells on and singing the glory of it.
Yeah, it is making a difference. It is. Even if it's just collaborating and problem solving. But the fact that we know there's someone there makes a huge difference, and she's working with the different agencies. And then, yeah, it's just great. It's
Yeah.
good to hear. Thank you for
All
that.
right, well, Council, if there's no more questions for Russ, I will thank you very much. And
problem.
we always look forward to your visit and your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our department reports and recommendations. The directors have provided their report for council review and will provide an update and receive questions from council. The reports will be presented and are part of the record of this meeting. Only items of new business arising from the reports will be taken for motion. And CAO Bedingfield, if you could introduce our department reports.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. We're going to start with our Director of Finance for her report first. Director Matthews.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My report, as mentioned, has been provided in advance, so I'm just going to go through a few of the highlights. From an operational point of view, it's important, I think, for me to note that last month we did celebrate Robin Pace, who's our accountant, her retirement, which was wonderful. However, at the same time, we did find out another member, a long service member within our team, will be retiring the end of October. And as you can see, that means we'll have a 50% staff turnover this year, which is fairly significant. So we will continue to see a few of those retired members occasionally come and help us onboard new folks, just to mitigate the risk of that loss of knowledge that really occurs when you have that large of a turnover. From a financial point of view, I've provided all of the compliance reporting that would have occurred last month with the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, along with the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. It is critical to note that those have met the timelines, as we've also submitted our temporary borrowing resolutions to the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Those were approved at last month's council meeting. And for any of those approvals to occur, we have to be in compliance with all of our requirements. So from an operational point of view, it is important for us to stay on track in case we have specific asks of the department moving forward. I've also provided financial results for year-to-date August of 2023, which is our first 5 months. Assuming straight line, we would think our expenses would be around a 42% spend rate. You can see from the statements provided that our expenditures are at about 40.6%. However, our revenue is at 82% for this point in the year. So I'm going to focus on the revenue piece for this month. Our final levy went out in August, and you can see from the financial statements we are now at 100.1% of our budget for taxation. So we're within $17,000 on $12.2 million of what we anticipated billing. It is a positive 0.14 budget variance. Next month, once we see our collection for the month of October, early October, we'll be able to provide a more fulsome report around where we are in terms of our receivables for our taxes. Traditionally, they've been very low. People pay their bills. I also wanted to note that we have received our HST offset in the amount of $50,765, and that did exceed our budget, which will be a positive thing as we move throughout the year. All other revenues are consistent with what we would have spoke about last month. From an expenditure point of view, there's really no significant changes in August that would alter the analysis that has been provided and the details provided before. We continue to see some timing differences, and there are a few reallocation entries, so you'll see in the notes that admin has some expenses that traditionally would be in other departments. With a new director and a new accountant, we're still trying to get caught up on all of the outstanding work. So you'll see those get more and more clear. All of the expenses are there, they just may be in a different bucket than what you're used to seeing them in, but those will be corrected as the work continues through the transition. So with that, that's all I wanted to highlight for this evening. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
All right, thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Director Matthews, just a question. Do you have the balances in the various reserve funds?
I don't have them on hand, but I can certainly provide them to council.
Yeah, it would be nice to
Yep.
see what's kind of left in all of them. Thank you.
You're welcome. We did provide the reserve balances for the sewer last month with the budget, but I can bring forward to council next time for general and capital.
You must have like 10 or 12 reserve funds, I think, right? There's quite a few.
There would be, yes, there would be a significant number.
Be
There's,
nice to see.
yeah, absolutely, that can be provided.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Matthews, the March 31st, 2023 financial statements, those have been submitted to the province.
Correct.
And when do we expect to receive the financial condition indicators?
There was a distribution of information provided to a host of people in August, saying that the financial condition, what did you say? Financial information return,
Yeah.
the backup that goes towards that they're looking at kind of redefining what that looks like. So there was a questionnaire asking people for feedback, and those have not even come out for us to complete yet.
Okay, great, thank you.
So they've just said, stay tuned. They're still working through what that will look like.
Great, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, next up, we have Kirsten Duncan, our Development Officer, who's going to present on behalf of Planning.
Good evening, everyone. For October 2023, we have submitted our staff report for the Planning and Development Department. A couple things to note is under programs and operations, we've issued 10 development permits for September with a total building valuation of $655,900. The activity and development permit report is attached to our report tonight. In addition, there is one new subdivision file that's been submitted in September, and one site plan approval was completed for a minor addition to a commercial property that abuts a residential zone. The appeal period ended on September 12th with no appeals filed, so we were able to issue the development permit on that. The Planning and Development is hosting an information session at Town Hall for employers looking to learn more about employer immigration programs. This session, which is named Intro to Immigration Programs for Employers, is happening on October 17th in council chambers here from 12 to 1 p.m. We ask that you RSVP to the Community Development Department for that session. In terms of internal support for GIS and mapping, a lot of mapping support was provided to the upcoming community events of Pumpkin People, the Palette Pleaser promo, and Harvest Festival. That one's always a tongue twister for me, among other various supports to the other departments. Trees have been ordered for the Blooms on the Block project, supported by the additional funds from the Department of Municipal Affairs Beautiful Streets Grant Program. We hope to be planting these in late October or early November, depending on the delivery times of the trees. Under tourism and special events, a couple things to highlight. The Kentville Multicultural Festival has been rescheduled for October 21st, so mark your calendars. Details are posted on the KBC website, Facebook event page, and the Town of Kentville website. As you can see all around town, the Pumpkin People are out in full swing, and they will be up until October 29th. Big kudos to Lindsay and Jerry for all their hard work on that event every year. And the last thing that I'd really like to highlight is Landmark East School is organizing this year's Pumpkin Walk. There is a change in location from previous Miners Marsh to now the Harvest Moon Trail that will allow for increased accessibility and safety preparedness. More details on that are forthcoming, but save the date for October 26, 2023. And that's all that I'll highlight for our report tonight.
Excellent, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for Kirsten? All right, looks looks
Easy
like
peasy.
you got off pretty easy tonight. I will remind our viewers that the Multicultural Festival, because it was rescheduled, are looking for volunteers because several of their volunteers couldn't go with the new date. So if you have 2 to 4 hours that day, they would love to have your help.
Thank you for
Thanks,
that.
Kirsten.
Okay, so next we have our Parks and Recreation report. Unfortunately, Director Langell isn't here. He's at a provincial conference this week with Recreation Nova Scotia. So, but he has asked me to highlight a few things in his report on his behalf. The first one being that the town of Kentville received funding of $38,000 from ACOA, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, and this was funding that was received to support this past year's 2023 Canadian National Mountain Bike Championships. So these expenses will be used to cover 2 capital projects for the event, along with some operating expenses. That wasn't originally budgeted, so that's a bit of a bonus that we can have. He also wanted us to chat a little bit about the planning of the hemlock woolly adelgid. This is something that we've put on your radar before, and that especially with our hemlocks, and in particular, there are a number of invasive species in our community, but specifically we're talking about the hemlocks, that treatment has begun. So step 1 will be to conduct tree measurements of the hemlocks at the Gorge Park. Step 2 will be to order supplies and insecticide. Step 3 will be to inject trees near waterways and use a spray insecticide for areas that are not near waterways. And the spray will be used on the bark around the bottom of the tree. And there will be communication to the public throughout the process. I'm just going to pause here to note that, so within your capital budget that you approved, there was $40,000 to put aside for that project. So that's some of the money where it's being pulled from, along with community fundraising. The other side of it is that this is being led by community experts and experts on this particular hemlock woolly adelgid, this particular invasive species, and supported by the Parks Department. It's very much using the expertise that we have in our community. Certainly Craig nor I thought that we would ever even know how to pronounce adelgid when we started this work. So there we go, we've come a long way. But we're quite fortunate to have this expertise in the area. And we're also very fortunate that we have caring and passionate citizens that want to look after our trees. For context, if we don't do this work, the gorge will quickly become pasture land. And the last piece he wanted me to highlight in his report is around the arena, that the arena was opened on September 18th. There were limited hours, and starting October 10th, it's in full hours now. We're having some staffing things that we're going through with relation to just some things that they're working through. So we're having to shift some of the schedules, but right now we have all of our bookings in for 2023-24 with some vacancies. It's really important to note that Craig specifically has been working on, or Director Langell specifically has been working on a gender equity policy or facility allocation policy for all of our facilities, including the arena, and this will come to council next year. So he's been working with the user groups at the moment just to say, here's this policy that we want to bring to the town of Kentville. We want to make sure that all of our public facilities have equitable access. How does this work for you, and how can we support you in achieving these results? So currently we have groups that identify as male have access 27.5 hours per week at the arena, and groups that identify as female are 26.5 hours per week. For public skates, there are currently set 178.5 hours of non-primetime public skate times. So that's before 4 p.m. on weekdays, and 22 hours of primetime skates after 4 p.m. on weekdays. It's noted within the Recreation Department that one of the largest assets that we have is an arena, and it's really important that as much as possible we ensure that all persons from the community have access to it. And that's the Recreation Report.
Thank you very much, CAO Bedingfield. Are there any questions? Councillor York.
Thank you. So I have 2. The first is the Super Happy Active Family Fun Time program is launching again on September 14th. Is there an opportunity to rebrand the name of that program? I understand it's likely tongue-in-cheek, however, I think perhaps even if we shift the A to an I as interactive family fun, we could make it shift. Just putting that out for, I guess, consideration. And secondly, is the ravine open for the public?
So anything can be rebranded. We've had a lot of conversations around this. There's a lot of brand recognition, a lot of tongue in cheek.
Appreciate that.
But I can certainly bring it back to staff to have that conversation and possibly even talk to the 150 regulars that go every weekend around what they would like to see it called. This program actually started on the South Shore and then was brought to the town of Kentville. And I actually don't know if it's still going, but ours is only getting stronger, so that's exciting. With regards to the ravine is not officially open, in part because, or mainly because we have yet to receive notification from the federal government that it is safe.
Okay.
So if you do go in the ravine, go with caution. There is quite a lot of loose debris, including broken glass and metal, off of the trail.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. First question, is there a reason why it's taken so long to be treating the woolly adelgid? I know that Berwick had it and they've been treating it for probably the last 8 months. And I know we've been talking about it for a year and a half.
Well, we just approved the money for it in this capital, so that would have been issue number one. Number two is the same people that were treating it in Berwick are also helping us, so there's only so many to go around. I will say that we will possibly put a call out for volunteers at some point to help out. I may be speaking out of turn because Craig has done a really good job taking over this file. But because there is a specific expertise around it, right, in terms of administering things, but certainly even within the count, even I was allowed to count trees. So I think that means that they'll accept anybody. But the woolly adelgid has also been found at the ravine, as I'm sure it's found in Bedford, it's found everywhere. So that's a whole other different thing to navigate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I might, neighborhood outreach coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And I see what it says here. What is that?
So this was approved in this year's operating budget for this position. The neighborhood outreach coordinator, sorry, I'm just finding it in his report. The neighborhood outreach coordinator is exactly what it sounds. So it's someone who's doing the outreach of the community. So when we talk a lot about supporting community for resiliency, for empowerment, going in and working with communities, this is going to be that person. So in the large spectrum of what Russ was talking about, for example, when we're talking about caring communities, we need everything from ensuring that people are sheltered from the cold to making sure that communities better, their community safety net is widened. So what Russ said was that he doesn't necessarily count people who are couch surfing as those who are living rough, because those people have people in their community that will make sure that they're not on the streets, even if they're couch surfing, and that's because their social safety net is really broadened. So that's one of the roles of the neighborhood outreach coordinator, is so that our communities get back to knowing each other, being caring for one another, so that in times of crisis, be it environmental, be it COVID, be it whatever that is, then we have each other to turn to. That's just generally the idea behind the neighborhood. So in the large spectrum of caring communities, this is kind of entering in here. It's also a long-term strategy for what we've been doing in the recreation department for multiple summers now. So we have outreach summer coordinators that go into community and animate those spaces, pull people out of their houses, get neighborhoods talking, so that neighbors can come together and say, wouldn't it be great if, and how can we support them to figure that out?
It sounds like it's a duplicate of Ashley at Kentville Police.
Well, Ashley's job specifically works with folks who are experiencing homelessness, and how can she help them navigate the system to get the supports they need. This is on the flip side. This is preventing that from happening. But the two positions very, very much work closely together. Ashley's an integral part of the team. Everyone here is an integral part of the team. Who am I kidding? But Ashley and these positions, including our housing outreach community coordinator, work very closely. So Ashley's at this end of the spectrum where people who are struggling need some support. The neighborhood outreach coordinator is in here saying, let's be resilient so that we ensure that that never happens to you.
Okay. Roughly what's the budget for this?
I don't have it in front of me, but it was approved in our operating budget.
I think Councillor Gerard was talking about Kentville Police, Ashley.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
No, because we had the other Ashley as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Yeah.
Different.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
that was one of the positions that was approved in this year's operating budget. What may be confusing is that I think it had a different title, but it's that position. Yeah. I can't remember what we called it.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. My question was the same as Councillor Gerard's. And I do recall us approving it in the op budget. I don't think, to your point, I don't think it was called the neighborhood outreach.
I think it may have been community outreach. Yeah,
Pardon?
it's community outreach.
Community outreach, okay. So you've just explained what it is. I'm still trying to sort of work through what exactly that means, but it's probably difficult to explain exactly what it is. But is it a one-year term position? Is it an ongoing position?
This is a full-time position that you folks approved into the operating budget. That would.
I knew
yeah.
it was
Yeah.
full-time. I just didn't know if it was like year to year, or if it was just for the ensuing year,
Yeah,
is what
a
I mean.
full-time position.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, that is in addition to the recreation department, as an outreach person that goes into community. So arguably, this person spends about 80% of their time in community and only 20% in the office.
So when you say into the community, do you mean going out to meetings, going to actual people's homes? What does that look like?
Well,
getting a
picture a
bit
community
granular, but-
that would, as an example, that would want to host a block party and don't know
Okay.
how to do that safely.
Okay,
This person could help with that. Picture a community that really wants to focus on community gardening.
okay,
This person could help with that. Picture a
Okay.
community that is having issues with regards to tagging and they want to address that. This person could help navigate that.
okay,
The person is quite skilled as a community facilitator, as an outreach, meaning that they're kind of the navigator, the connector.
okay,
So it's really about getting neighborhoods together. That's why we inserted that name around neighborhoods.
neighborhood, yeah.
So that, at the end of the day, when there's a blowing wind and somebody comes and a tree's blowing down in the yard, they know that Jim down the street has a chainsaw and can help them out. It's that type of a thing. So it's
Okay.
getting back to community empathy, and that continued community care model that Russ was talking about.
Okay.
So that no longer do people fall through the cracks. So as we're dealing with housing crisis on this end and arguably a homelessness crisis on this end, the community, the neighborhood outreach coordinator is on the preventative side. Because there's something that happened in that trajectory that that child or person ended up no longer
Cause that
being housed.
disconnect, yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
I know that when I struggle, I have friends and family.
Right.
Because I have that community of care. But there are people in our community that don't have that, and that's the role of the neighborhood outreach coordinator.
Okay, thank you, that helps.
Sorry, that's not your fault. I just need to explain it 5 different ways. 'Cause it's,
that helps.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. And it's not on the report, but the dog park.
I think it was there, wasn't it?
No, there's nothing there, but because I had heard that, for the last couple of years, the dog park, we're partnering with New Minus, and I heard we're no longer partnering with New Minus.
So that is not true. We are partnering with New Minus. Yep. Is there a question?
Well, yeah, so they were gonna take care of the maintenance.
So we have entered an agreement with them where they are actually paying us to take care of the maintenance. Any complaints or problems, the number is on the sign of the dog park, and that goes to New Minus, so they handle all personnel issue.
Okay. And they're paying like the full maintenance.
I can't remember what the details of the contract are.
Can you find out? Because that's sort of important.
Yeah, I think it's based on the estimate of how much staff time would be there. It's really just mowing. Yeah.
Thank you very much, CAO.
Jeez, I have to go back to my other role.
I didn't know how hard Parks and Rec
This is
was.
a tough job.
All right.
All right, sorry about that. Next up is police, where acting chief will come and give his report.
Good evening, Mayor Snow, CAO, and council. You should have received reports from August from the police board and had a chance to go over them if you have any questions on those. One thing I will bring up, as Wanda mentioned something about retirement, obviously, I think it should be noted that we have a member that works with our staff that's coming up on October 26th will be her 45th year with our police service. She's probably not watching. If she is, she's probably yelling at me right now. But Dawn Fitch has been with us since I was born. It's
She's
now
definitely.
she's really
yelling
yelling at me. But I think it speaks quite highly of her and the organization for someone to stick around for 45 years. Yeah. So unfortunately, she has put in her notice and she's retiring at the end of this year, and she's going to be a hard void to fill. But I just wanted to throw that out there. That I think that should be noted. So if you have any questions on the reports, feel free.
Council, if there's any questions? Council Maxwell.
Thank you, and thanks for the report.
Yes.
I'm going to ask, well, over the weekend, I had a citizen approach me about the patch that our members are wearing right now with the black maple leaf and the blue line. And I've done some research, and there's two meanings for it, but up to the organization, you know, what the meaning is. So I'm going to ask you to explain to the public here why our members wear that patch and when they wear it.
Yes, so I can tell you we've had lengthy discussions with this at the board level, and especially when Chief Butler was here. If I'm not mistaken, Councillor York, I think it started in January was the initial time frame it started, and it wasn't until July, August that we implemented it into policy. So if you're not familiar, there's certain times of the year that we wear patches, members wear patches. I think there's, I tried to make a list because I had a feeling I was going to be asked these questions. So in February, we wear a patch for African Heritage Month. In June, we wear one for Pride Month. In September, which we just implemented, we wear one for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And October is the month for the Fallen Memorial, which takes place this Sunday, and it's actually in the city this year. Lengthy discussions around the board. There's different views on what the patch resembles. For us, it resembles the loss of fallen members and support for them and their families. And that's why we wear it in the month of October. It was developed into our uniform policy. Like I said, it's been out for a while now since the PEMA legislation came in, but it had been amended in, I believe, July. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was July when we made the amendments to the uniform policy based on conversations at the board. Yeah, so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that explanation, and I certainly do think it's something that should be recognized. So thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Marty. Thanks for your report. I just have a question around, I've noticed there's been some, sorry, I lost the words, window breaking
Yes.
around the downtown area in particular. I've noticed it, CIBC and the new cafe there, Wheelhouse. And I'm just wondering, are you seeing more of that? Is it happening sort of middle of the night? Is it just when patrol isn't, the folks are doing other things?
Yeah, so the CIBC would have been summertime, I believe.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I believe,
Okay.
and it's, because I noticed it when I was on vacation, and it had happened, and I didn't see the report because it was off.
Sure.
And then the most recent one, which would have been Friday night, to the new cafe, which is obviously, it's unfortunate to begin with, but it's very unfortunate because they've only been here for 2 weeks.
Right,
There's currently, obviously the investigation is ongoing, possible suspect, but not enough to lay a charge at this point. But it's The second one appears to have happened in the evening.
Mhm.
The CIBC one, I'm not sure when it did take place.
Mhm.
But like I said, it's unfortunate. Have we had them in the past? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Can be kind of sporadic. Hopefully that's the end for a while, but, yeah, like I say, very unfortunate for that business, because I mean, like I said, they just opened their doors, I think, like 2 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks.
So
Yeah.
another question, if I might. So in Center Square now, my understanding is that at some juncture, there's going to be signs posted where it essentially will close down,
Curfew,
or
yeah.
not open to the public
Yeah.
for a period, like 10, is it?
10 PM, yeah.
Until,
I think it's 7 AM, I
Okay.
believe. Don't quote me on that, but it's
Okay.
either 7 or 6, one of the two.
okay. And what does that look like?
As in, how would it work? So,
Yes.
it would fall under the Protection of Property Act notice, right?
Okay.
So, once the notice is, we're obviously gonna do some education on it.
Sure.
Because that's the biggest thing, right? Is to make
Absolutely.
sure that everybody understands
Okay,
this is why we're doing it.
right.
There really shouldn't be a need for people to be there after 10 o'clock. There's nothing open in town, so obviously, for the first little while, it'll be an education piece,
Mhm.
and then after that, if things continue to escalate and people are being warned several times, then obviously tickets would be issued. Yeah.
And to Russ's point, there's folks that are vulnerable right now that probably are there because they don't have anywhere else to go.
Yes, I don't know if that percentage of the people that are there at that late at night, because typically they're shelter people,
Okay.
and then they're going to the shelter.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I mean,
Thank-
there's power there, there's Wi-Fi,
Okay.
so there's chairs.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
very, very comfy.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, no, it's a nice spot. No, for sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
and those signs have been ordered, and I think they're arriving soon, is my understanding, but yeah, education for sure. Yeah.
Councillor Gerard.
Just to follow up on that, will the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi and the power be cut off at 10 till 7 to
Good question. I never,
encourage?
yeah, good question, but certainly, I can make note of it for further conversation with, obviously, the town part, because I don't have any power over the
No.
Wi-Fi
You don't have the
or
switch.
power.
Are there any further questions for the
And it's
chief?
really good to hear all the positive comments about KPS tonight, and I know if Chief Butler's out there, retired Chief Butler, his ears are burning, because a lot of those had to do with his vision, so, yeah, I'll make sure to pass on the words.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for that. All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Thanks.
I'm going to invite up Director Bell for the Engineering and Public Works.
Okay,
Report.
sorry.
You have to give me my moment.
I jumped the gun.
Okay.
Sorry.
And go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As I usually start my report, I'll start with the Water Commission. In September, we had another well pump failure in our well field. But as of last Wednesday, it has been replaced and is up and running. In order to minimize the downtime caused by long delivery times and limited stock by Canadian suppliers, we make it a practice now to have a minimum of one deep well pump and one motor on the shelf, as they say, at Public Works after experiencing prolonged wait times for similar equipment during and after the pandemic. Under sanitary sewer area service, there were no direct operational issues with the sewer service in September. However, the large ductile iron force main that runs from Kentville to New Minas, owned and operated by the municipality of Kings as part of the regional sewer system, experienced several breaks in the line along the east end of the Harvest Moon Trail. These first breaks have now been repaired, but it's become more evident that this section of 46-year-old line needs to be replaced, most likely next fiscal year. It was originally scheduled to be replaced this year, but was deferred to shift priority to upgrades at the sewage treatment plant. Since writing this report, there was news once again over the weekend. There were 2 additional breaks in the line, one repaired over the long weekend and another one today. So I think that's a total of 8 breaks that they've had in that section just in the last 2 weeks. So it is evident that it is an ongoing concern, just due to the age and the proximity to the salt marsh, I think is causing that pipe to finally see the end of its useful life. So don't know what I believe they have to do a report to Environment to come up with a contingency plan based on the number of breaks that they've had. So they may look for, I suspect at the next regional meeting, certainly an action plan on what to do next. Under Public Works, sound like I just got quiet here. Under Public Works, an update for Canaan Avenue. Work is nearly complete on the Canaan Avenue street repair project. The retaining wall is now fully installed, and the sidewalk was replaced yesterday. The guardrail still needs to be replaced with the anticipated reopening of the street later this month. An update on recent storm events and ongoing remediation and design work. Public Works crews and various local contractors continue to work on several locations around town that have infrastructure impacted by recent storm events to make necessary repairs and upgrades. A stormwater management consultant has been engaged to recommend the upgrades and design stormwater management areas, SWMAs, as we say, upstream of the areas repeatedly impacted by these ever-intensifying storm events. Under Traffic Authority, I think I had this in my report last month, but the province has erected the lights, as probably folks have seen, at either end of the bridge. But as of the writing of this report, we still are waiting for NS Power to energize the new lights. Under projects, mostly capital projects, the second phase of McDonald Avenue subdivision rebuild is progressing well. All pipe work is now installed in the ground, complete, tested. Everyone's on permanent water once again, which is great, with curbing and paving scheduled for later this fall. The second phase of the active transportation network project, which includes the downtown curb and sidewalk replacement, as well as a section of sidewalk along the north side of Main Street between Leverett and Cornwallis Streets, came in on budget and has been awarded to Dexter Construction. Folks have no doubt seen the remaining section scheduled to be poured, section in front of the Main Street station will be poured this week, with the paving completed next week for the tidy up sort of the fall project. Because the late award and late time of the year, the majority of the work around the downtown loop won't be completed now until spring and early summer of '24. So what that means is we'll see the phase that's awarded to Dexter and the next phase, which would be scheduled for '24 anyway, will both be done now in '24, but they'll have an early start, can start perhaps even as early as April on the section around the downtown loop on the sort of the inside, and then no doubt we have limited contractors that bid these types of work, so there's a good chance that they could even be successful in bidding the second phase, which would be across the road on the opposite side of Webster and opposite side of Aberdeen Streets to complete that project, all in the summer of '24. That is my report.
Thank you very much. And open the floor to questions. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Thanks, Director. I have a couple of questions. The first one is a lot of complaints lately about the parking at the bottom of Main coming down Chester Avenue. I think we put those spots were added in 3-4 years ago. I'm pretty sure in this council, it might have been in like right at the bottom. If you're coming on Main and you want to make a right and go up Chester, there's 2 parking places there on Main Street. And the view is very bad when you're coming down Chester and you want to come in either direction. I mean, that should be looked at. That's kind of a dangerous loop there, dangerous turn there.
Those, I think those spots were added a few years ago when
Right.
that was a business, and that now is
back to
is a residential. So that could be reviewed by staff.
And I got a couple questions. And the other one is the stop sign going to be put back in place on coming off River Street back onto Webster?
Over behind the church?
Yeah.
Is that one still down, Councillor?
Yeah, that's still down, and I wasn't sure if it was going to stay
No,
down.
it has to. No, it's not a slip lane. You
Okay,
do need to
that's
stop.
A few questions.
You do need
about
to
that.
stop. The stop, the crosswalk has changed location.
Right.
And there should be a stop bar and the stop sign, but I will check
Okay.
into that right away. No, that's important.
And I got a couple more. I'm wondering as well, I think I had emailed a couple times, but I never heard back. The folks at the lower end of Prospect, when the power goes out, they lose their water. And I think I think it was in 2014 or 15, the town bought a generator to help ease that problem or assist with that problem. Is there a generator there? Does it work? Does it not work? Because I don't know if whichever time we lost power, the folks there didn't have any water for that duration.
Right.
And they're wondering why it wasn't turned on or what the status is.
Yeah. No, I can give you an explanation on that.
Okay.
So there are, with the elevation differences that the town has, we have several pressure zones. There's a section, what we always call the overlook booster, which services the homes prior to the expansion up the hill, up towards Deerhaven in that area. Before that was ever developed, the last homes going up the hill, there were a few homes not on water that are now on water up on the Goodwin and Healy properties. But prior to the last homes, before we had the water tower, and we were fed off of McGee Lake and gravity fed down through town, we really didn't have the pressure zones. So that area was boosted, has always been boosted by what we call the overlook booster section. So those pocket of homes that they're at an elevation that's too high to have straight gravity pressure from the water towers, and not high enough to be on the section above the water tank where Deerhaven and the south end of Prospect are. So that section on that booster, there's there would be probably 20 homes, has never had a generator. That station never has had one purchased. It doesn't run on a generator. I'm not sure why, because they should still have water, just reduced pressure. But I have heard from one particular water customer that they lose water entirely, which is a surprise to me, because they should still have water, just not the pressure that they would have when the power is on. Everyone that's up the hill from the water tank, we'll say in the Deerhaven and in South Prospect area, those folks are on a booster. They rely on that 24/7. That booster is on the same generator that runs the water plant that was purchased in 2015. So when the power goes out, that's an automatic generator. It kicks in, it runs our plant, it also runs the booster. There are times, when you get a power bump and not really a power outage, when those boosters will kick out, the generator may not even come on, but because they kick out on a safety, it requires a call out from the water operators to go out and reset those booster pumps that feed up the Deerhaven Hill. So those folks often incur like a 30-minute period with no water until we get happens in the middle of the night. We get a call out from from our dispatch to say there's no water, and we have to reset those pumps. But they are boosted, and they're boosted all the time by power, and obviously by generator power when the power's out. But they're always running. Someday there will be what I envision a I call them a pencil tank, a tall, skinny tank up on the highest elevation, sort of at the town limit, up near the end of where the Goodwin and Healy properties are, where someday, who knows, I guess Prospect may itself be expanded out to the old Beach Hill Road reserve that runs through there out to Highway 12. But the highest elevation is just up there at the top of that hill, and that's where I would see a tall, skinny tank that would give those folks water all the time without the need for a booster.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I got two more questions. Just in your comments about the sidewalk around the inner block.
Yep.
From what I got, they're not gonna start those until the spring, so they're gonna finish.
We're now into mid-October.
Right.
We like to see at least 2 months of cure time before we get into the salts and that sort of thing on sidewalks. So we're gonna be spending, upwards of, $1 million this year and more, and maybe almost that much next year on this big project. Doing it this time of year isn't the best. So
This is just a question, I know we've already budgeted for it, but those sidewalks couldn't have been patched in any way? It was impossible? I only ask that because I hope when they come in to do this, that we're not ripping up a whole street and then waiting, because that's been ripped up now for about 5 weeks, right? over
What has?
in front of
It's
Main
been-
Street Station.
It's been,
And I know that's not anyone's fault, that's just the way that the world is now, but a lot of we've lost quite a few businesses downtown in the last 3-4 months. And that could be a really big negative impact on some of those folks to have their sidewalk ripped up for even 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
it will be done in a different manner than
Right.
what you see across the street.
Mhm.
You know, the curbing will go in, there will still be access to businesses,
Mhm.
you know, on foot. It'll be gravel by times, but
Right.
it'll happen in the same manner that it happened across the street in Main Street Station, but a little different sequence in the disruption. They'll have to do it in smaller blocks, do a stretch of curb,
Right.
then get the sidewalk renewed. It'll be long, you know, take a longer time
Yeah.
to do that amount of footage of curb and sidewalk, but it is time. That sidewalk was done in the 80s, and it's a real hazard. It's up and down. There's the bricks. There's the panels themselves. One's up and one's down, and patching really isn't the option.
Okay.
Isn't an option.
Then my last question is about the consultant that was hired for the storm water management. Who was hired to do that?
I have contacted, you know, someone that we work with a lot in the past. They were involved in the Chester Avenue rebuild here 5 or 6 years ago. Design Point, well-known stormwater management and
But
and
who's
civil
the firm?
design.
though? I mean, how? Yeah.
Design Point, sorry, the
Oh,
firm is
sorry.
Design Point.
I thought you said okay.
No.
Sign Point. You said.
Design Point.
Design Point.
Design
Okay.
Point. Yeah.
And what's the cost? Do you know what the cost is yet, or we don't know yet?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Bell, what's the cost of the cleanup so far from the storm at the end of August?
Don't have a firm number, but we've had, as you know, we've had loomers in town for several weeks. Haven't received even an interim bill from them yet, but we know what they are, you know, per day. But it's tens of thousands of dollars, no question.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, to follow up on Councillor Zabian's question.
Yep.
I would have thought that to bring in an engineering firm, we would have done a tender for a stormwater, because I assume our policy says over a certain amount of money.
Procurement-wise, we can deal with consultants, you know, under $50,000, and it'll be less than that for sure. So, timing.
To do a whole study on
This
what
is
we've got to do?
designed for certain problem. This isn't a townwide study. No, that's not. We are
No,
working
no, I
on-
don't mean townwide, but I mean, there
Yep.
are special areas that
Yep.
need to be dealt
And
in.
it's under that threshold, and timing wouldn't, if we had to go through a whole, you know, selection process, I still stand behind the fact that they're a known consultant with a good reputation and have done lots of work in the town and are familiar with our infrastructure, so that's who we've gone with.
Now, I still, because I brought it up, I think through emails, I still question whether this was what council wanted at the last meeting when Councillor York brought up her RFD. I thought it was, we were gonna do an independent tender and stuff like that, which has nothing to do with Director Bell. And if anybody wants to join in and ask questions, I would appreciate a discussion on following up, because I don't think we had a great discussion on the RFD, and I think it was just sort of moved along. I asked if we needed a motion and was told no, and then, so we end up here. I don't know whether anybody else wants to jump in or not.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mary. If Jillian, or sorry, my apologies, if Council York wants to go before me in, okay. So I'll just go ahead. Thank you. So thank you, Director Bell. So that's Design Point, and so I think I, along with Councillor Gerard, was thinking that it was a more expansive project that we were doing, but you're saying that it's more geared towards those, call them the problem areas around town, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So fast forward, once we get this and we have more information and we can make different decisions and, you know, figure out what the cost of those decisions are going to be. And I spoke to this in our last meeting. Would it be in order for us to create an entire stormwater management plan in conjunction with the secondary plan that we're looking at doing for the western part of country, is the town, sorry, not the country. The country. All right.
It could happen as part of the SPS. You know, we have had several different stormwater management studies, flood studies. A lot of them have been done. I know Mayor Snow shared one from decades ago.
Yes. Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of the upstream problems will also be addressed during the design of the Donald Hills Road. That is going out, due to the size of the project, that it does have to go out to
tender.
engineering
Okay.
proposals and
Right.
of course, design, you know,
Yeah.
tenders and RFPs and all that. So that will be out, actually very soon, likely before Christmas, the actual tendering, of the design portion of the Hills Road. That, you know, is the biggest area. What the secondary plan will be looking at is that whole area in the hundreds of acres of undeveloped land. I mean, the SPS will look at all facets, I guess, of the town's needs. But, I guess I'm trying to remember what your question was.
No, that's okay. You've answered that, or those two. The certain sites that we've identified as being, I'll call them problem areas, around town that have had, you know, flooding, and I sort of alluded to this at our last meeting. Is there anything that we can do to mitigate some of those areas in the meantime? And I think I was very precise in the last meeting where I talked about not on private property, but on town property, particularly where we know where those problem areas are, so that when we have unusual amounts of rains, and even in some cases now, just an ordinary type of rain, is there something that we can do to mitigate the risks around those properties only by using town land, streets?
Well, the runoff starts, you know,
Up,
all
wi-
uphill.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
in order to mitigate that, that's where the stormwater management areas need to be built. Some of them could be on town land as it is now, like partly on in the gorge area, but the gorge area also borders private property. So I feel there will be land that needs to be obtained. That's just in one particular area, but there's other areas west of that have issues during major events. There's some
Okay.
out in the business park that, you know, you have washouts there. It's
Yeah. Okay.
It all starts uphill.
Yeah,
for sure.
okay. This is my last question. I feel like Councillor Zabian, because I keep asking them. But back to something Councillor Zabian mentioned was up in Deer Haven and the overlook booster that you talked about. So I've spoken to a few folks up there that mention, you know, that if it kicks out, sometimes it takes 20 minutes or half an hour or something. Is there a certain type of unit or generator that could be there that would never kick out?
No, it isn't the generator that is the issue.
Okay.
The pumps themselves have a safety feature on them to keep them from being overloaded.
Okay.
When that pops, they have to be manually reset, and that's a call out from an operator.
And so
when
there's no way.
There's no rhyme or reason to when
No.
that happen either. It
Okay.
certainly doesn't happen every time.
No,
If-
of course not.
If the power goes out and the generator starts, sometimes it's seamless. The pumps will be off for the 2 minutes it takes the generator to come on. But
Okay.
usually it's when there's a power bump, that's
Yeah.
when
So it's
there's.
not the generator issue?
Not the generator at
Okay,
all,
that helps me a
No.
lot. Thank you very much. Sorry, that's all.
Councillor York.
Thank you. I think to Councillor Gerard's point and to Deputy Mayor Savage's point, and I won't belabor it, but I feel like or for me personally, there's a bit of a gap in understanding the work that's happening, the work that needs to be tendered, the work that has been tendered, and I just feel a little bit in the dark as to what's happening across town at the moment. So recognizing that this is obviously an ongoing and active situation, and it changes probably by the day. Is there an opportunity for us to be briefed a little bit more fulsomely on these specific projects so that we can really understand what's going on? And then secondly, is there an opportunity for us to have that secondary planning where we can incorporate all of these ideas, where we can sit down and actually have studies done and get those people from the outside at a table where we can all sort of figure out what's happening? Because I feel like, and perhaps it's myself, so I will speak only for myself, I'm just a little confused as to what the town's plan is, and if we could get something a little bit more concrete in idea.
So if I may, because maybe I can, let me add something here. So just because I also had to have it explained to me. So maybe
I'm not alone.
yeah, so we're all on the same page here. But there was, as Mayor Snow presented at the last meeting, there was a report that was done, a stormwater plan that was done. Those same pipes are still in the ground. Am I right, Director Bell? There is nothing that has shifted, so that plan is still quite relevant. What has shifted is the impact of the weather and then some of the land up above. So much like the thing that around the housing piece, we're looking at solutions, both short-term, medium, and long-term. So in the short term is getting loomers in here to make sure that the pipes are clear and are able to accept the water that is falling. The medium term is engaging with that consulting firm, that engineering firm, to figure out what can be done with the shift that has happened just below Donald Hiltz Road that is creating that havoc right now. And that's why all that silt and rock is falling. And that is going to take a bit more time than asking every day for an update, because that's a longer piece. So we actually need to figure out what the scope of the project is, if there what the cost is, bringing that back to council. If it does mean accessing private land, we need to go through that whole process. All of these different things. It's not just a driveway's being put in on town land and we can fix that and there's a retaining wall. That's not how that works. And then all of this, as said in the original stormwater plans, can be addressed when Donald Hiltz is put in, as was stated in that study a while ago. So that is the long-term plan. We have funding for that. We're going to start working on it in the next year. In the next couple years, we'll have that in place. So this is kind of the short, medium, and long-term piece, if that helps. So in terms of updates, I don't know if it's helpful because Director Bell is going to have to come back anyway with regards to a funding ask in terms of how to move forward on that.
Okay.
It just is not within a couple weeks.
Yeah, I guess because the larger concern, that I see, and I recognize that I am not an expert in any of these fields. However, that medium-term piece, the piece that is the land that's falling in, we can have loomers come in and suck out pipes. But if that land is continually falling in, and that's our medium-term goal, should that not be a tendered process if we have that time to have that medium amount of time between now and when we would actually be able to work on it? Should we not be doing a call for submission for this kind of stuff?
So right now, we don't know what that would be because we have to get the engineers to come in and tell us what that process is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So step one, and I know this is a long, listen, I sat down and drilled Dave on this as well, because I needed to understand. But step one is getting someone who's specific expertise in this area, because we have an engineer on staff who's quite well educated and is an expert, who has identified that having someone who has specific expertise in this one area would be quite helpful, also from a capacity perspective. So that they need to come in and give us an assessment on what needs to be done. And then from that, we'll be able to put out a tender for the work. Is that correct, Director Bell?
That's bang on.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I got the test right. That's great. I was listening. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. It's a longer process. And the big issue is that it's not our land, right? So we can't just go in on private land and start digging trenches and putting Scotch tape on it.
Okay.
Which isn't the solution, and I'm not an engineer.
No Scotch tape will be used.
No.
Councillor York, that's good?
I think yes for now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Most of my questions, I think, have been answered, and I totally understand the process that we're going through here. And it is going to take time. We can't do things toot sweet because studies have to be done and then plans have to be made. And I understand that. I just wanted to mention that I was into the Historical Society there, the Heritage Building, for their closing on Saturday, and they had, somebody must have given them a 1965 zoning plan map for the town of Kentville done by Hilton Simone way back in 1965. And on that map, it shows all of the waterways that exist in the town of Kentville that could lead to potential flooding. And so we have them almost all the way across the south end. And you'll remember down on Levitt Avenue and down that way, the serious flooding that took place down there years ago. And that was something that, could happen again. I think we had to rebuild dikes in that situation and so on. But it is interesting, and I did post it on my Facebook page, so if anybody wants to go and look at that map, studies have been done. We already know where the water is. The water is not going to change. The amount of water is probably going to change with climate change, but those waterways are there, and they've been there since before the town of Kentville became a town. So it is worth going and looking at and just seeing. It's eye-opening how many waterways there are in our town. So Director Bell, thank you for doing this and taking the lead on this. And again, I have full faith that you and your team and your consultants will come up with a mitigation plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Gerard. Oops.
Go. Maybe it's just me, but it sounds ridiculous to say we're getting engineers in now to look and see what we need to do studies on, and then say we're sending out tenders to start the Donald Hiltz connector before Christmas. That none of that makes any sense, all while saying this is a 1 to 3 year project, and that for some reason Loomers is going to be the savior, because every time it rains any amount, that 36-inch pipe clogs up like it clogs up. I was up the other day and they tore it apart and it is filled. As a matter of fact, I haven't been up in a few days, but I think it's probably still clogged in certain parts. What I would like to see for everyone that's being affected, so this is more than just Condon Avenue, this is more than just the east end of town up Prospect and places like that. This is for all the residents who are now getting water in their basements in McDougall Heights. The communication that has happened over the last several years has been absolutely terrible. That's on us for not doing a better job. But I'd love to see a public information session. Like, are the people that are coming to do these studies, or it doesn't even sound like a study. It sounds like they're gonna do a preliminary study before we know what we have to study. Are they gonna be standing here so we can ask them questions on what's wrong, how do we fix it? Because what I don't wanna see is the massive waste of money that happened in 2019 when we had rain and we had floods and we tore up an entire street. We put all new piping underneath of it. We didn't even do it in the proper way. We tore it up, we put in a storm sewer just to tear it up the next year to replace water and sewer. And say, you know what, this is gonna fix it. Because I asked that question in 2019. I asked, is this gonna fix the problem? Yes, this is gonna fix the problem. Fast forward 2023, and nope, it wasn't the fix to the problem. So whatever we need to do, whatever this council needs to do, whatever decision we need to make sure that these problems get fixed and addressed. So A, hopefully it doesn't happen again. But B, the number of phone calls that citizens give us from all over the town to say, I never had water in my basement before, and this is not just, it rained a lot, I got water in my basement. That happens to me at my house, right? My land is sloped towards my house, that's my fault. But when developers develop up above, and I've been fine for 10 years, but now all of a sudden I'm getting water in my basement, I hate when people call me and say, this is what the town said. That it's not their problem, you gotta call the developer, or it's a civil action, so I gotta sue my neighbor. Someone in this building stamped an okay when a development permit was given. Are we not responsible for that? I really wanna, I think a public information session on addressing people's issues and what we're gonna do to fix it is essential, because this problem's been going on and it's not improved an iota since the 7 years I've been here.
I can't speak to past practices, and I don't know, I don't know if Director Bell has any input on the previous, what happened in 2019. So what I'm hearing is that communication to the public is important, and making sure that the public is aware about what the town is doing in order to address the issue.
That's important, but what's more important is, number one, not wasting money on engineers. I don't know, maybe it's just me that it didn't make sense that we're gonna hire some engineers to tell us what we need to come in and study and investigate.
So I'm just going to stop you there. The process that has been laid out by Director Bell is step one, an engineer that has specific expertise is going to tell Director Bell what needs to go in the tender. Then the tendering doctor is released, step two. Once we figure out what that cost is, that comes back to council, and step three is that the work is completed. That is, we can't release a tender without the specific engineering specifics in it. So we need someone to give us those specifics. So that's the process.
I totally understand, but this is gonna be a massive deal, because in part of the problem is 2023 infrastructure that's flowing into 1920 infrastructure. So this investigation is gonna be so extensive to make sure that, you know, developments for the next, I think what happened 30 years ago when they started developing new subdivisions, and this is no one in this room, but what they did was they said, we're gonna develop to here, and we have the infrastructure to take that away. And then they went up a little further and up a little further, and now all of a sudden it's 2023, and we're 30 years beyond, and we've got a fraction of the number of trees that we used to have, and we're still trying to stuff everything into pipes that possibly have been here for 100 years. I don't know how else I can say, do we need this? But I think this has to go out to tender for an investigation, or at least a public info session where the people that are gonna do the investigation are there to answer questions.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian?
Thank you. I had to leave the last meeting when this came up, so I'm unfortunate that I had to, because I would have liked to have seen a motion put on the floor that night, because in my time here, I've realized if there's no motion, it's just a lot of talk, and things sometimes don't get directed the way that we intend or the way that we want. This is a little concerning to me, because I don't know what exactly, if you've identified what you mean by problem areas, which areas are problem areas, because we've got a couple, I don't know, that's kind of a general word right now. The other thing is, the areas that I classify as problem, I visited most of them during those couple storms, whether I should have or not, I did. And they gotta be fixed. So if that means, as a council, we need to pull back and cancel some capital projects and put our money on replacing this infrastructure, then so be it. That's just, it is what it is. And that's important. And I know, you hear things like, well, we didn't budget for this. It doesn't matter. You gotta take priority over what's important. That's important. The other thing is, I don't think any of these people in any of these areas that I spoke to think that these are gonna be fixed in a week, a month, or even a year. But a little bit of education on what's causing them, that's what they wanna know. We all wanna know that. Where is it? And you refer back to this study about the Donald Hills Road. It's from 1989. There's been a lot of development since 1989. I can't look at that and say, okay, that's gonna be the fix. What if that road's implemented in 3 years or 4 years and we still have flooding? And then the next council's back to square one. So maybe it would have been a good idea, just to put this out there, to have a tender for experts in this field, maybe. And maybe that's what council should be looking at. Then we go with the one that has the most, that we feel has the most qualifications, and then go from there. I'm not taking away from our, we have an excellent engineer. I just think that this is a huge problem, and not just on one street. I'm not referring to just one area. There's multiple areas with flooding, and these are our citizens. They pay taxes. I think that's right now we should be concentrating on. And there's projects, I'm sorry, this budget, which was referenced earlier, I didn't approve it. There's things we can pull back on if we have to. That's what you do when you're looking at our economy now. When you look at things you can afford and things you can't, you gotta pull back sometimes. And I think right now, I think we should, as a council, decide who we want to look at this collectively, if enough of us agree, and go from there and fix these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Prior to going to Councillor Maxwell and Deputy Mayor, I just want to say to members of council, what we have been presented with here is a company, Design Point, who did Chester Avenue for us, you will recall, and they've done many other jobs in town, and the intent is for them to come in and tell us how to remediate these high-risk areas. So if we consider Condon Avenue, if you were to send me in there, it would be with a front-end loader and dig a big hole so that the rocks land in the hole, but then at the end of the day, you still have this big hole. Well, this engineering firm is not going to do that, and we need to know what the right answer is today based on the water that we got today and looking out into the future and extrapolating where we're going to be. So that's why we need this company to do this first step, and it is only a first step. And Councillor Gerard, you were quick to point out that we were told that this was going to fix it in 2019. And everyone stood hand on heart that everything was going to work after 2019. And I don't want to minimize what's occurred, but I'm going to say that we haven't had an overpowering issue since that time until 2023. And so we have to say that our infrastructure under normal conditions, whatever today's normal is, worked. And so now we need this company to come in and say, look, we're past being able to work with what we have, and we need to do something new. And from there, it's going to go out to project. And as a council, that's our job, is to fund these things. And as Councillor Zabian said, do we pull back on something else and bring our capital money? We've got capacity to borrow, and there's also grants out there. There's another $15.2 million that's coming out of the provincial government that's going to be available within a couple weeks to go out and put applications for. I'm going to tell you that this council, or this team of staff, never stopped putting in the requests for money, and there is stormwater management money out there. But we're going to need the engineering study before we can even start digging a hole in the dirt to make sure that this changes. So I guess I've tried to take it from our perspective and what our jobs are, and we're being told by staff that they have a plan. And I know that it's not a plan that's going to fix everything today. However, it's going to get us to where we need to be. And I think that we need to have a little bit of patience. And I agree, Councillor Gerard, that we do need a presentation. Perhaps Design Point comes in and makes a presentation at the fire hall and talks about, our geography hasn't changed. Since day one, our geography has not changed. So as Councillor Maxwell said, all you have to do is look at that 1965 map to see where the waterways are, and we know that people have built in them. And people continue to build in these things, and they continue to want to build in those. So us as council, we have to put the stop on those things. We have people currently wanting to build down in the flats. So I'm going to say that I think that a public engagement would be a good thing, and I push that to staff to see if it's even doable. And then people can get a sense of what we're looking at. So now, Councillor Maxwell, please.
Thank you. I believe in history, and I believe that history repeats itself. And so I believe you have to look back in history and see what happened. In that 1965 zoning plan, as the mayor said, those waterways are clearly marked out, and they go all the way across town and down below. And, you know, they're all going to have to be looked at. Those areas were identified as areas that could lead to flooding. All of those waterways could lead to flooding in certain areas of our town. And so, like I said, we've already seen some of those waterways lead to flooding. So down off Klondike, that's already been a flooded area, and that was looked after. And so we're going to have to pay attention to all of these areas. And I think that the fact that we have a plan, and hopefully this plan will lead to solution, but I think we all need to keep in mind that what the solution is, what is normal today, and what the solution is for today may not be the solution in 40 more years, which is what we're looking at. Yes, permits were given 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, with a totally different landscape, but still the waterways still there, and totally different requirements that the province and the town was asking for at that time. So I think that rushing and trying to, you know, get a fix right away is only going to, you know, lead us to trouble. We need to take it step by step. We need to make sure that what we do is going to last for a good number of years. And 40 or 50 years from now, we're not going to have more citizens sitting down there with a completely different council going over, you know, the same thing. And so I think we need to look at that, and we cannot deny, in this town, we cannot deny that there is climate change going on. And that is something that we cannot deny, and we cannot pin that on every single piece of infrastructure that we have in town. We have aging infrastructure, it needs to be upgraded, we know that, we have a plan, we're working on that. But let's keep it in perspective, and let's let our plan work out, and let's let our engineer do his job, and that, I think we'll get a really good fix, and I feel very confident in our staff and what they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think pretty much everything's been said, but I just wanted to, you know, when we talk about, Mayor Snow, when you talk about the grants that staff's applying for, and when we applied through the ICIP and got the grant for the Donny Hills Connector, you know, perhaps there might be some other grant monies out there that we can use for some of these infrastructure upgrades and studies and things like that. But I think having a public information session at some point may be a great idea, just to convey to folks what's happening, and maybe Design Point would do it. But I feel comfortable, we have the steps now, we have a really good understanding of what they are, and we'll move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard, you're next. However, I'm going to remind you that you have spoken twice on this matter, so something new.
Time.
Okay.
Just a couple of short things. Number one, to address permits being given 40, 50, 60 years ago that caused water events. I'm talking about permits that have gone out in the last 5 or 10 years that are causing water events up in McDougall Heights and places like that. But the other thing I'll say about climate change, if you look at what's been taken away over the topography over the years, climate change has nothing to do with it. And if it does, they've been talking about climate change since the 50s, and then again heavily in the 70s. So you can't sit here in 2023 and say these are due to climate change when these things have all been talked about for my lifetime anyways. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian, you have spoken twice on the matter as well, so I'll ask that you go with what you have new to add to this conversation.
Absolutely, thank you. Director Bell, could you identify what this firm is gonna be sent to those problem areas, correct? What are those problem areas? Which areas have you identified as problem?
Most of them are on the, sort of the Park Street area right now. There's obviously the Condon issue. There's the area coming off of, Palmer and Glenview subdivisions, or Glenwood subdivision rather, that flows towards KCA.
Yeah,
That pipework actually was part of our capital works project as under Park Street, storm replacement that's being done as of today. They've started that stormwater replacement between KCA and Park Street, but that's literally is failing infrastructure that's from the 50s. It's galvanized pipe, so it's being replaced with concrete as per our capital plan. But upstream of that, those areas are, it isn't just that. There's Prospect, Glenview has lots of runoff that comes down, again from south of the developed land. It's upwards.
Okay.
Those are the areas that they're going to look at.
Okay.
In particular, a stormwater management area upstream of Condon is one of the ones they're going to look at first off. And that's not a study, that's a design. That's a design to get done ASAP and bring back to council.
So they're gonna come back and say, this is what's caused this, and this is the fix for it, the remedy for it.
This is what we want to build.
And did they give you a timeline when, how long that would take?
No, I expect to meet with them again this week. Today's what? Today's Tuesday. So, yeah, we're supposed to meet.
And then you might know if it's 6 months, 3 months, or what?
Oh, yeah, it's priority, so we don't want to prolong that.
That'd be nice, maybe.
Some work can be done in the winter months, and to me, that's the right time to be doing some of that.
So just so I understand the process, you're gonna meet with them, they're gonna tell you how long they're gonna be, whether it's, because they gotta do their study first, find out what the cause is, right? Exactly, or how they're gonna remedy it.
They've got to do some field work.
Right, so then you're gonna put out a tender and then you're gonna come back and tell us that the cost is whatever, X amount?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. They'll give us an estimate actually prior to tender.
Okay.
They will give a high-level construction estimate before it ever goes to tender, so you know what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for Director Bell while he's still standing? All right, Director Bell, thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much
Good
for
evening.
that. And CAO, I guess your turn is up, so I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Also, thank you to Director Bell. I appreciate all of the work that you're consistently doing on that project. So you have my report in front of you. There's just a few things, that I wanted to touch on. So my report is for the month of September, most of which I was the Director of Parks and Recreation. But during that time, I did meet with the previous CAO to support the transition. So we had weekly meetings to support that. So I do appreciate all of his efforts in making sure that I had information. But what I have learned the most, and we talked at as a staff meeting this morning, is that this job is really just about solving the problems that are in front of you in just different problems, which is kind of what the job of all staff at Town Hall do, is get those problems, work to fix them in an efficient and effective and professional manner. And that's what this is as well. So the main job that's come up is trying to get, or ensuring that the amazing staff that we have all of the things that they need to be able to be successful at their job and serve the citizens effectively and efficiently. The Directors Committee has met to begin the task of evaluating internal processes and making sure that that's the case, and really focusing on Kentville as returning to be a place of employment that everyone's excited to work for, everyone feels valued and safe, and also that we have the things in place that are ensuring that all of our procedures use a lens of equity and empowerment, and all of those things that we're looking to bring forward to our citizens. So we've started that work. It was already said before, but I would be remiss if I also didn't say goodbye to Robin Pace, whose retirement we had. Not as old as Marty, but Robin was here for 25 years. And we did have a celebration for her, and she's just such a valued member of our community here at Town Hall. So we wish her well and thank you for her continued dedication. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I was able to meet recently with the Annapolis Valley Regional Library, and I know Councillor York are on the board, but those the library is an organization provincially that hasn't had much funding increase in a number of years. And so as the province works to evaluate that, we just talked about the value of our Kentville Library and what it meant to community, and that we had a community that fundraised $100,000 for our small community library. And that the town of Kentville is certainly one that values access to literature and literacy. And that is my report.
Thank you very much. CAO, Councillor Zabia.
Thank you. One question, and you may not know the answer to this because you're still new there, but do you know if anyone from the town of Kentville applied for the infrastructure upgrade grant? I know the town of Amherst received don't quote me, 350,000 a few weeks ago. You probably don't know the answer to that, but I think if I read correctly that they're still accepting. I think there's still some money there, so that might be something to look into. I know they just got 340 or 350,000 at the end of September for the same kind of work. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have had conversations with the province about that.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. The Housing Accelerator Fund, so I see that the application's been submitted. What is the timeline on that, and are you able to disclose roughly how much we might receive under that grant?
So I can go, did you want me to go into the next report? Around the, was that in my report? Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah.
It's all over.
No,
it's
we
over
got
the
another
thing.
question before we go to the next report.
Oh, you're talking about the Housing and Community Partnership?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can ask it under that report.
I can answer it now if you want. It did go in sorry, what was your question? Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just acknowledged that it went in because that's what it says.
Yeah.
But just that, like, what's the timeline and roughly how much I don't want to know how much we applied for because I don't think you can disclose that. But do we have an idea of how much we'd hope to receive? It's probably the same question.
This has been one of I'll do my best to answer it.
Okay.
The answer is that it's really quite vague. The process to apply has been what we're calling a journey.
Okay.
Internally, in that the requirements keep kind of shifting, and so our housing outreach coordinator has had to do a lot of shifting. She's had a lot of meetings with both the province and federal partners on what that is. It was just submitted. They extended the deadline for rural applications, but kept the deadline for urban applications. So what you're seeing out there is a number of announcements with regards to the HAF funding for urban applications.
That's why. Okay.
That's what's happening.
Oh,
so
okay.
So the rural has just been accepted. We're hoping that doesn't mean that we get whatever's left. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we're So it's what we have requested is certainly in the multi-million-dollar range. What we get, I have no idea.
Sizable.
It's all
Okay.
based on units.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm wondering, CAO, about the regional recreation facility, and I see here that the committee is gathering more information. I'm wondering what information they're gathering. And this is something that's important to a lot of people, is that we get something here. And I'm wondering, as far, if we're making any progress at all, or are the parties still, so divided that we're not closing the gap at all, or, what's going on with this? But what other information are they gathering?
Yeah, and I'm going to try and answer that, and I may lean on Councillor York because I had to step out of that meeting early. But we did hold a meeting on September 26th where we were presented with some information. So there's essentially, before we're able to bring any information back to council, it's about gathering costs. It's about gathering what's even possible at this point in time. So there's some more intel that needs to be gathered.
Like site-specific costs.
Yeah, thank you. So site-specific costs for what the committee has looked at. What I can tell you is that Director Langell, when it comes to this coming capital season, will have, or budget, is looking to gather all the information so that council can make a decision. It was talked about that certainly in the first phase, the new facility that they're talking about will not have an arena, and that's something that we need to take note of here. So Director Langell, we'll be bringing all of that information back to council. That's our goal, so that when it comes to capital, you have all the information that you need in order to make decisions on our facilities moving forward. And then that specifically is site-specific information.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I wish I could give you more, but that's it. Yeah.
It just seems to be a very slow process. And you know, and the slowness of it is frustrating for a lot of people who've been waiting decades and decades and decades, especially for an indoor swimming pool, which can be used by so many different communities and, you know, so many different people. And, you know, it's just disheartening to see parties not be able to sit down and come up with something. And so that, you know, it is disheartening. Thank you.
All right, CAO, next report.
So this is the second Housing and Community Partnerships report. There's just a few things that I wanted to highlight since you have the report in front of you. One is the community of care, and you heard Russ talk about this in his presentation. So that's the temporary sheltering and exploring partnership opportunity. He talked a little bit about one of the big assets that Kentville has in this region is that we have all of these not-for-profits who are doing essentially the work, the arm of outreach and healthcare. That is one of the benefits of being able to move so hard in this work and be leaders in it. But those organizations are in a state of crisis, a lot of them, because the numbers are impacting and their funding is not. So this is a big piece in terms of exploring what it means by the community of care, and then temporary shelter exploring partnership opportunity with the provincial government. And we're going to have more on that as it comes up. But again, it's looking at how are we finding support for people in all stages of unhoused. The other piece on the reverse side of the report, and this is the local and provincial partnership opportunity. So I'm not going to read all of it, but I wanted to touch on a few things. In response to the community statistics, staff have been working with local not-for-profits and provincial partners from the Department of Community Services to explore potential solutions within the town of Kentville. So I just want to pause there and note that what we've been told from the data perspective is that the town of Kentville had a 1.8 times increase in homelessness. And if there is no action on this, then we will have a much greater impact moving forward in the coming months, years, and beyond. As a provincial and local not-for-profit solution partnership, the aim will be to increase access and enhance shelter service capacity within the town of Kentville. Kentville is one of many potential partners involved. However, a caveat here is that we are seen as a community that has some great opportunity because of those not-for-profit and our partnerships. The province identified the town of Kentville as a leader at the municipal level in response to homelessness and at a high state of readiness to partner on the potential project. No decisions have been made yet. This is still at the provincial level, but staff are continuing to be in conversation with the province, and staff will ensure that all solutions meet Kentville's land use bylaws and zoning standards and are committed to thorough community communications. Identifying solutions is an opportunity for the municipality to support the resiliency of local not-for-profits and to recognize the ongoing dignified and meaningful work they do in the community. That's the report.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So when I reviewed this CAO, and I had to review it a couple of times just to sort of get a real gist for what it was trying to say. And just hearing Russ talk tonight, and also the chief talk tonight about the homelessness piece and vulnerable persons. Am I, excuse me, am I to read this that we are partnering with the province in as much as within the town of Kentville, we would provide shelter in a way that might mirror like an encampment, sort of? Is that sort of where we're going with this? And the reason why I say encampment is because when we talk about meeting the land use bylaw and zoning standards and things like that, I'm just trying to really understand what this means. And perhaps encampment isn't the right word. It's the word I know through HRM.
Yeah, we generally keep it at community of care and not really encampment because that has a
Okay.
negative connotation.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah,
telling me
no, I
that.
appreciate that question.
Okay.
It's really tricky because we have been in conversations even today with the province.
Mhm.
And so until they figure out what is happening internally, then we aren't able to talk too much about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But then there will be an immediate communication to all of council when that does happen. It's just, they just need to have things in order on their end.
So it would be something that would come back before council, or would it need to, if it meets those, or LUB and zoning?
As long as it meets all of those requirements, it would need to come back to council, but as said here before, communications is really vital, not just to council, but also community.
Okay.
Essentially, it's, in the spectrum of housing, it's a way to support, to make sure that as we get into the colder months,
Yes,
that everyone is looked after.
okay.
And Kentville is seen as a community, much to what Russ was speaking of, as one of those ones that's in a state of readiness because of the work that we've previously done,
Okay,
which is a really exciting opportunity.
thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. I've got a question. I really don't want to sound cold because it's not about the empathetic part of this. It's about the dollars and cents part of this. Housing is a provincial mandate, not a municipal mandate. Is the province coming up with money to help? Like, we have to have staff on that. And, they, like the province does a lot of times, they download to municipalities some of their responsibilities. So is there, as we asked before, is there money for this? Are we gonna ask for money to include the time that staff spends on this?
Until we know exactly what this is, it's kind of hard to say, but yeah, the intent would be that this is a provincial project that we are supporting.
Okay, so this would be their bill, hopefully.
I think that is the intent.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you've got a couple more reports for us.
Okay. So we have a few RFDs, requests for decisions, that have come back. The first one being the RFD for sidewalks. So Kirsten is still here. So I am going to actually ask her to come up and speak to this.
Thank you, CAO Bedingfield. So in front of you is a report that I've compiled in regards to petitioning for sidewalks. So just to give a little bit of the origin, council requested this information this summer around the process that's available to town residents to request that a sidewalk be constructed in an area where it was not required to satisfy the subdivision bylaw. And that looks like on arterial and now with our amendments this past summer on collector roads, installing that sidewalk as part of the primary and secondary services. So we do have an existing bylaw. It's known as Chapter 63, Curb and Sidewalk Charges Bylaw. And this bylaw thoroughly explains the process of how to disseminate the costs to adjacent property owners that are affected by a local improvement, such as a new curb or a sidewalk. However, the bylaw does not outline the process in which a petition initiated by the affected residents is accepted by the town council. In the past, where this bylaw has been utilized, the work has been initiated at the discretion of the town and not necessarily through a petitioning process. Section 81 of the Nova Scotia Municipal Government Act, which is titled Bylaw Regarding Payment of Charges, does outline or does allow the municipalities to proceed with the creation of such a bylaw, and does outline a petitioning process where persons owning more than 50% of the frontage of the real property fronting on the street, or on the portion of the street on which the work is being performed, have filed with the clerk a petition requesting that the work be performed. So what that means is that more than 50% of the affected property owners are in agreement that this work should be completed. So we have researched local improvement bylaws and other municipal units to gain a better understanding of accepted methods of petition, and have determined that most municipalities require at least a 2/3 of the adjacent property owners be in favor of the proposed local improvements before agreeing to proceed with the work. However, there are some municipalities that align more with the MGA requirements and only require that more than 50% of the adjacent property owners to be in favor of the proposed local improvement in order to proceed. As it stands right now, the town of Kentville would move forward with the process outlined in the MGA. However, if council so chooses, they could direct the CAO to have staff draft propose amendments to the existing bylaw, Chapter 63, curb and sidewalk charges, to outline an approved petition process for resident-initiated local improvements that better suits the needs of the town of Kentville. So there's two options to proceed forward if council so chooses. Again, just clarifying, that could be either just moving forward with the process outlined in the MGA, which is 50%, or we could come back at a staff level and just kind of determine ourselves what that process looks like for the town of Kentville.
All right, thank you very much. Before I put it to council, which one we're going to go with, a staff report with regards to the petition process, will that need to go into bylaw, or will it just be a policy on process of petitions?
I think from looking at what other municipalities do, it is a part of their bylaw so that it's a very clear process for the next person who has to then enact that section of the bylaw.
All right, so council, regardless of which option we choose to move, they both require a bylaw change, and as you know, a bylaw change, so the first thing we'll have to do is get a staff report from staff with regards to the change we need, and then because it's a bylaw, it will have to go to first and second reading. So this is not by any means, I'm gonna say, a quick process. We're at least a couple months down the road. However, we do have options, and before I put it to motion, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask very specific questions of the two recommendations. Because I want to put a single motion on the floor based on the most number of councillors for either one of the recommendations. And the first one is that we're going to use the petition process as identified in the MGA. In the second, we are going to have a petition process drafted by staff, which could do the 2/3 approval for a petition as opposed to the 50% plus one. Is that kind of where we're going with this, Kirsten?
Yeah, it could be 2/3 or it could be another number that's agreed upon, but I think as a staff, we will kind of review, again, what is best for our community and bring forward what we would see fit.
Okay, thank you. So council, if you have any questions with either one of these two recommendations, because I'm going to poll you to ask you which recommendation we should go with for motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kirsten, for the work that you've done. Sorry, I'm tired. I have a question, and it would pertain, because I would be inclined to go with the second one, that council received the staff report, et cetera. Would one of the items in that report relate to what the percentage cost split would be by the town and the affected residents?
So our bylaw, as it currently stands, does outline how the cost is disseminated.
Under Chapter 63, yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So we would just be adding to that bylaw to just clearly define what a petitioning process looks like, whereas we already have that language within the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor York.
Thank you, and forgive me, I do not know what's in chapter 63. So as there are areas, I just don't, as there are areas where there would be like in the business park, where it would be largely, almost entirely commercial, if they were to propose the sidewalk, would there be different costing for commercial versus residential?
Oh, good question.
Hmm.
I think it's just, I think it's just solely based on the frontage as it's affected within the overall project. So
Okay.
that cost is then kind of, the area is looked at and then it's divvied up based on just the percentage of frontage that
Okay.
is affected.
Because it costs the same to build a sidewalk, whether it's in front of a business or a house. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No problem.
All right, council, if there's no further questions, I am just going to go around the horseshoe and ask whether you prefer option 1 or option 2. Counselor Gerard? Counselor Huntley? Counselor Zabian?
Option 2.
Counselor York?
Option 2.
Okay, we have quorum. Deputy Mayor?
Option 2.
Counselor Maxwell?
Option 2.
All righty, and I say option 2 as well. So we do have a recommendation that to CAC and that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting, direction to staff to provide a staff report relating to sidewalks, and that council, and the staff draft a proposed amendment to the curb and sidewalk bylaw, chapter 63, regarding an approved petition process for residents initiating local improvements. Somebody could move that, please?
Second.
Oh. Okay, Deputy Mayor, sorry. Councillor Zabian for the second. It has been moved and seconded that CAC direct the CAO to have staff draft proposed amendments to the curb and sidewalk bylaw, chapter 63, regarding an approved petition process for resident initiated local improvements. Is there any further discussion on this, Deputy Mayor?
Through the chair to Kirsten.
Sure.
Kirsten, so I'm just reading chapter 63 here very, very quickly. And I don't see the part about the percentage cost split between the town and the citizen. Do you know it right off?
Sorry, so the town of Kentville would charge back the total cost back to the affected property owners based on what their frontage is on that street in which the local improvement will be applied to.
Based on what their frontage is?
Yeah.
They had 20%.
Yeah.
Pay 20%.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the direction to staff to have staff draft a proposed amendment to the curb and sidewalk bylaw, chapter 63, regarding an approved petition process for resident-initiated local improvements. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kirsten. Are you hanging out
Yes,
there?
so Kirsten's also going to take the next RFD, the request for decision around amenity space.
Thank you. So again, to start with the origin of this report, council requested information earlier this year relating to the land use bylaw requirement for amenity space within new multi-unit developments containing 4 or more dwelling units. So a little bit of background, amenity space, also referred to as recreation space in previous versions of the town's land use bylaw, has been a requirement in Kentville's planning documents dating back to at least 1994, if not before that as well. In previous years, amenity space has been required as part of developments in the R3 zone, which is the multiple unit dwelling zone, The residential converted multiple unit dwelling zone, which was referred to as the R3A zone, and within the commercial general zone, C1 zone, when the use was R3 or R3A in nature. In 2019, when the new land use bylaw was adopted, the language around amenity space requirements was placed under the general provisions section, where it provided clarity that section was to be applied to all zones where there are new multi-unit developments containing 4 or more dwelling units. Our current municipal planning strategy does address amenity space on page 34, section 5.7. I won't read the entire section, but there are some things that I'd like to highlight. So over the years, council has understood the benefits of adequate outdoor amenity space in relation to new multi-unit dwelling residential developments. However, in certain areas of town, it might not be economically viable to require that new multiple unit residential developments set aside large areas of land for recreational purposes. This is particularly true in the downtown area where lot sizes are small and land values are quite high. Given that the town is actively seeking to attract multi-unit development to the downtown core, it is important that the amenity space provisions allow for some flexibility. Specifically, the land use bylaw should allow the option of providing such space in the form of internal recreational facilities such as exercise rooms, pools, or balconies rather than outdoor amenity space at grade. So we have researched what other municipal units require for amenity space within their land use bylaws to ensure that our documents are on trend. Meanwhile, keeping in mind that our vision of our town as adopted within our municipal planning strategy describes Kentville as Kentville is a healthy, vibrant, integrated, and complete community where citizens can live, work, and play in an environment that supports a high quality of life. In conclusion, at a high level, most municipalities have some sort of amenity space requirement when it comes to more dense dwelling units, although it's not the same across the board. Some municipal units have more strict requirements around how the amenity space is designed and provided, and some simply require that a certain amount of land or space is provided for the tenants to utilize to ensure that they have access to recreational space in some form. Providing amenity space is a human-centric approach to housing and allows our housing to align with the social determinants of health by providing space for social and environmental connection. A full analysis can be found within Schedule A of my report that outlines other municipalities' amenity space requirements.
Thank you very much. So based on the recommendation that we have from staff, given the report, so we have received the report, and the recommendation is for CAC to support the current amenity space requirements in the land use bylaw as it reflects the vision of Kentville and provides downtown residents with a personal space. So the motion is that CAC support the current land use bylaw amenity space requirement. If someone could move that, please. Councillor York, thank you. Deputy Mayor for the second, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that CAC support the current land use bylaw amenity space requirements. Any discussion on the matter? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I agree with what is here, mostly, but I think what I'm concerned about, and I have a concern here, is that if we have some of our old buildings, and nobody is going to add other floors to the building, but somebody wants to maybe take the space and make a few more units, that with them doing that, they're going to have to put in, a gym or something like that. To me, that defeats the purpose of trying to provide more housing. Now, I was down in Wolfville and I saw where they are putting in their downtown another building. It's a brand new build, and it's going to be X number of units, and they're going to have indoor facilities for a gym and things like that. And I agree with that. So if we knock down some of our old buildings downtown, and somebody was going to build a new building, then I would agree with this, just the way it's written, that yes, we should do that. But if somebody is just going to take, and I read also just recently how one of the housing strategies is to use old buildings, instead of tearing them down, to redesign them or make them work so that we can add more housing units. So I'm thinking, if we're not changing the square footage of the actual building, but we're going to put in smaller units, then I think it would be a deterrent for an owner to add those units if one of those units has to be given towards a gym. And we're not solving the problem of adding more housing, if I'm making myself clear here. So I think that there needs to be something to allow a building owner in the downtown to do something with their present square footage without having to add amenity space, where they have commercial on the bottom and then they have some sort of residential on the top. And that residential, instead of being 2 apartments or 4 apartments, they want to make it 4 apartments or, 8 apartments. Or, they want to make bachelor apartments instead of, full one or 2 bedroom apartments. I would like to see us look at, and this would fall along with what Russ told us tonight, making our bylaws work to allow to have more housing space. So I think where it's downtown and we have Center Square and we have access to our trails and we have, all of those types of things, I think there is amenities there very close to that downtown core. And so I think we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot here, or we're encouraging people to sell their buildings and then knock them down and build bigger structures. And I'm not entirely sure that that's what we want to see starting to happen in our downtown. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. I brought this forward, I think, in April, and the reason was a few developers I had spoken to have properties downtown, and they wanted to put apartments upstairs. I don't know how many of you travel the buildings downtown, but a lot of those upstairs are vacant. There's quite a few of them actually that have nothing going on upstairs. And if you read this the way it's written here, for a 1-bedroom apartment, if you have 4 or more, you have to give up 200 square feet per unit. So if you wanted to put in 4 1-bedroom apartments, you're gonna lose 800 square feet to have some kind of multi-use room or recreation or whatever you wanna call that space, amenity space. And that could be 2 more apartments. So somebody could put in 6 apartments, and we know we have a housing crisis, we already know that, or they can put in 4. Just in that example, and of course it could be different, varied on how big you want the apartments and whatnot. I just think, this is great if you have a new building and you're going, this is a great bylaw for a new build or someone who's got land, because the amenity space could be outside. But how many of those buildings downtown have land? They have the land that the building's on and that's it. There's no other land for any amenity space outside. And I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot, I guess. I'm gonna mock that comment, because I know people have come in with ideas and they've been turned away just because of the way it's structured. Nobody's fault, it's just the way that it's worded. And I just think, I'd rather have people living downtown. I think it'd be safer and it'd be more inviting, safer. I wanna see people walking around at night. I don't wanna, and I'm back in town every night. I'll be back tonight when this is done again. I'm back every night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock, and I don't see very many people walking around at any time of the night. So I'd rather have our downtown inviting. Let's let people use those spaces upstairs. And before anybody throws, it's not me. I have nothing to develop upstairs. But I think it is time that we work with some of these developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Zabian. The downtown core, we're trying to increase density. And, we don't require these, even new builds, to have parking or anything. The town has areas that provide for parking. And we have Center Square, we've got the park next to the King's Arms, we've got the trail, there's the little park over by, I call it a park, over by the courthouse. And, you know, I think we have tons of green space and amenity space for people that want to come and live in downtown Kentville. I don't see that we should have to require that at all. Other places, absolutely. But when you want to increase density, I think it's more enticing if current property owner or a new build comes to town and they don't have to use up, as Kirsten said, the value of land downtown is much or higher than other residential spots. And I think they should be allowed to use it for housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. So as it's written, it does say that there is flexibility in how this can be interpreted. And I believe that through your office, flexibility is kind of your game. So when we look at these things, does it mean that there could be like a rooftop patio as opposed to something at grade, or as opposed to something inside the building? So theoretically, a 1,000 square foot rooftop patio in lieu of losing a unit inside the building, could that be an option? So there is some flexibility there. My concern with balancing housing and my current concern rather is with balancing the need for housing and the need for density, and also the quality of life that we're going to be providing to the people who come into those residential units. I appreciate that 4 units is better than 3 in terms of having housing available, but I also think that 3 units is probably better than 0 if these spaces are currently empty for housing. So if there is flexibility in terms of how people can create that space, it doesn't necessarily need to take up the square footage inside a building. If there are options, and I'm sure the planning department would work with people as well, I think there is something to be said about the lifestyle that we would be providing, and that we would be creating by removing these community spaces. We heard this evening that Center Square is going to be closed to people at 10 o'clock at night. There are theoretically times when you would want to be hosting or being in a space after 10 o'clock, and it would be nice to be able to do that within your own building. So if that means being on the rooftop, that's what it means. If it's a little balconette at people's buildings in the back or apartments in the back. Again, this is not my area of expertise, but I think there is something to be said about the quality of life inside of these units. And it's written in here that there is flexibility and creativity in how that square footage could be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Thank you for that report, Kirsten. And what I wanted to say was very similar to what Councillor York said, in as much as having some creativity, I think will be key. And I know that your department does have that creativity, and you exercise it when these sort of things excuse me, come forward. I automatically, when I read through this and I read the staff report, I automatically thought of when we were in COVID and people wanted to go out on balconies, and that was really all they could go to, or so something like that. So I think having amenity spaces is important. And when I look at neighboring communities like Wolfville and Bridgewater, Truro, HRM, East Hants, it's all very similar in nature in terms of the square footage. So I think it's an important piece for people to have that space. And I'm glad that the department has the creativity that it does with saying thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. A lot of those buildings downtown can't really afford to have a rooftop terrace, and I'm just wondering like I said, I don't know, I'm gonna repeat myself. A lot of those properties just have the land they're on. So where are they gonna have a 250 square foot balcony on each apartment? How can we creatively fix that? We can't, correct? So if someone only has a plot of land and their building's on that plot and they have no room for a rooftop terrace, they're gonna have to abide by what's written there, correct? There's no creativity we can.
I mean, in terms of talking about different ways that we can accept amenity space, I think that, I mean, I'm not an architect myself or an engineer, but there are ways that we can recess sections of buildings to create that patio if a building lacks it. Some buildings do have some sort of rooftop space on the second floor, so just trying to encourage developers to take advantage of that. And then to Councillor York's point, rooftop patios, if that is a feasible option, can be utilized. And then using some sort of space within the building to create a community room. It doesn't have to be a full-on gym. It can just be a space that those residents can have access to have a sense of community within that building and gather. Again, to to Deputy Mayor Savage's point, in a post-COVID era, we saw our trails being shut down within a few hours' notice and access to outdoor space being restricted. So having that space that is within that residential building that is for those tenants for that purpose, I think it is quite important. It might be challenging. I know most of you have dealt with building code requirements that throw up barriers, and this is just one aspect of this whole conversation of requiring amenity space. When you start having multiple units in a building, then more building code requirements come up that also have to be met. So this is just one step in that process, and I just encourage you to consider that as well.
Thank you for that. I think where I struggle with this is that there's people that literally have no place to live. And there's developers that have come in and wanted to use their properties to house. And for a developer to come in and want to invest in 4, 5, 6 units, it's costly. And they want a return on it too, obviously. That's common sense. No developer's gonna come put up buildings just because they're a good person. They wanna get a return on their investment. So to come in and put 1 unit, 2 units, and give up half of a unit or a whole unit for an amenity space is very challenging in these old buildings that are 100 years old with no land. So you can't go put park benches around the building and have gardens. It would be beautiful if you could, but you can't. And I think, I've been here now, I'm going on my 11th year in town. I don't think there's any unit downtown that I can think of off the top of my head that has been reconfigured with any residential in 11 years. And if there has, I will apologize, but I can't think of any right now that have been modified to put residential in, and that's quite telling. So it looks nice on paper. I can appreciate the because of COVID and on those are all excellent reasons. But I think it's time now that we look at this exclusively at the existing buildings downtown, the old ones that they just can't. They weren't built for that. And I think really it is time for us to allow people to come in and put residential in there and give these people a place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I appreciate some of the creativity that's been thrown around here, but first of all, I don't envision, all those old buildings downtown having rooftop patios on them without extensive work being done to the roof. So, and you can't have people walking around on top of the roof without causing roof damage. I know that from my brother's company. So that's in theory, it sounds good, but it won't work. And I don't think that we want to have like 5 or 6 patios downtown, with parties on top of them in the evenings. I just don't think that we want to be encouraging that. And like I said, we're adding cost. We're adding cost to redo a building to allow even a patio on the top or a balcony out the back. I just look at one of those old buildings down there and say, look at all that space up there in the top of that building, and we can't put anybody up there because we have to have amenity space in our downtown where we have lots of recreational services. I mean, there's tons of ample opportunity for people to go outside and go for a walk, whether it's just around the square or whether it's down the trail or whether it's to Miners Marsh or whether they go to the rink and go skating, or, there's tons of stuff for people to do. Go out for dinner. Go to some of the restaurants and so on that we have in town. There's lots of things for people to do in our downtown. But why do we have buildings with space upstairs that's not being utilized because developers can't make it work with amenity space? This is an old downtown. Unless we want, like I said, unless we want to encourage those old buildings to be torn down, like they're doing in Wolfville, and build a brand-new one, and then put that stuff in, you know, I think we have to look at what our downtown is and say, what can we do here to contribute to housing in the Annapolis Valley? As Mr. Sanchez said today, we might need to make changes in some bylaws. Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. I am of the opinion that we as councillors make decisions based on the betterment of the town for our community and not to line the pockets of developers. If we are making decisions so that a developer can more easily make a return on investment, then we're doing it wrong. I think we need to take a look at our priorities, and I don't think it is unreasonable, given that every community that's in this report in Schedule A, from the town of Kentville, the town of Wolfville, County of Kings, Municipality of East Hants, HRM, all have the same requirements. So all of these municipalities are saying that it is important that people have a place to live, absolutely. But it is equally important that those people have a space that is dignified and that is conducive to building community. Those things can exist at the same time. We can have a concern about housing, but again, I go back to 3 units is better than no unit. It is a step, but it ensures that the people who are going to be living there have a quality of life that harmonizes with the town of Kentville's priorities as stated in our MPS. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Xavier, I've got you up here. You've spoken twice on the matter. Something new, please.
Yes, thank you. I just, through the chair, to Councillor York's point, the apartments in all the residential units in Wolfville are full. They're a university town, so they're gonna fill up regardless. I'd like to put a motion on the floor if I could.
There's already a motion on the floor, Councillor.
Well, we're gonna vote on it then, I guess, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, you've spoken twice on the matter. Something new, please.
Yes, I should have called a point of order on the comment made by Councillor York. I didn't say that we should be lining the pockets of developers. I said it was very costly for developers to develop units. I didn't say we should be looking at lining their pockets.
Thank you.
Developers aren't going to build if they can't afford to build the unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. I guess it's hard for me to make a call on this because the first thing I wonder is, I'm curious about what developers have to say about it. So if they were here tonight and we were around the table and we said, if we wanted to make this residential, yay or nay, and if you still said, no, I'm not going to do this, I want to know what are the reasons why. So if, for example, nobody's living there now, I get, and it's not residential, but how many developers have come to us for an ask about a change? Like, is there any data out there? That's kind of where I go first to see what they think, because I can't put my mind as a developer because I'm not one. I know it's got to be expensive. If we said we were going to do that for residential and they want to change, I'm sure structural, there's all kinds of money that they'd have to invest. Again, not a developer. However, I'm curious what they're saying, I guess, for me to be able to make some sort of decision.
Thank you. CEO, did you wish to say something?
I just wanted to clarify that I know Kristen talked about a rooftop balcony. That is just one example. And so that is, totally depends on the state of the building and what's possible and is up to the developer to kind of make the decision if the requirement exists. From a town perspective, and what you've been hearing in reports is that the fact that the town of Kentville has taken a stand on a dignified approach to housing is one of the reasons why we're getting attention. And that dignified approach is because we value community and we value connectivity, hence us hiring also a neighborhood outreach coordinator to go in and work with communities and to ensure that they have that sense of togetherness. Yeah, I just wanted to point out those pieces. I think we're getting stuck on this idea that it's going to be on the roof, or it's going to be a pool, or it's going to be a gym. A wall is a wall is a wall. So depending on the requirements that council decides upon, then it will.
I just wonder if I could steal Kirshner for just a second. This may be helpful if it's relevant. It may be helpful to the discussion, but as development officer, she's the one who has to tell us whether it's relevant. Thank you.
Did you have something to add?
Solicitor Matart did bring to my attention a section of the land use bylaw that does talk about residential conversions. However, that is only in the case of a maximum of 4 units, whereas that would be potentially considered depending on the era of the building that was constructed, whereas we're talking about buildings that have more than 4 units. So it would be right at that threshold and something that could potentially be considered. But again, with most of the examples, we're talking about 6 and 8 units, and that section only applies to a maximum of 4 units to be considered.
Okay, thank you. If I may ask a question, does a developer have the opportunity to, I'm going to say, come to council first, requesting not having to go with the requirements of the LUB? And is this a matter that if council denied their request, that they could take to the UARB? So is there an appeal process? So if based on our current bylaw, our planning department says no, do they have an appeal process to council, and or do they have an appeal process to the UARB on this matter?
Yeah, so there are 2 things that I'm kind of hearing from what you just asked. The first of the relaxation of the bylaw. We can consider variances. However, there's very specific situations in which those can be applied to. Mostly they're in relation to setbacks and parking space requirements, heights of signs. I don't believe that amenity space is something that can be varied. However, should a developer bring forward a completed application and I take the stance that it doesn't meet the intent of our land use bylaw and I deny that, then they have the right to appeal that to the UARB, not necessarily council, but UARB.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the word variance. I couldn't pull it.
No problem.
All right, if there's no further discussion, are we ready for the question? And the question is that CAC support the current land use bylaw space requirement. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is defeated, so we'll send that back to staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now we have business arising. So both of these matters we have seen prior to this meeting. So the first one is the revised municipal planning strategy amendments. So the matter of the policy change recommendation has been approved by council at the September 25th, 2023 meeting of council. These changes reflect the wording changes requested by council only and do not substantively change the approved amendments. So the recommendation is that CAC approve the revised policy recommendations as requested by council for adoption into the MPS. So the motion would be that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the revised MPS policy recommendations. If someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the revised MPS policy recommendations. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the revised MPS policy recommendation. Voting is now open. Deputy Mayor. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. The next matter is with regards to the zoning request on Prospect Avenue. You will recall that at the time that we received this request, we did not have full surveying details. So what this does is it updates that application. So it has been approved for first reading by council on September 25th of 2023. The matter before council is one of the specific details to the application as does not change the substance of the application. And it was that CAC approved the revised details on the zoning application shown as lot 2023 on a plan of subdivision showing a portion of lands conveyed to Stephen Healy and Patricia Healy prepared by DeWolf and Morse Surveying Limited as its plan number 2023-238P being part of PID 55112999 from large lot R5 zone to single dwelling R2 zone. And the motion is that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the revised detail on the zoning application. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor York for the second. It's been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the revised details on the zoning application. Is there any discussion on this? Or can you remember what the PID number is? The question is that CAC recommend to the October 30th, 2023 council meeting approval of the revised details on the zoning application. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, we have no correspondence for this evening's meeting. However, we do have an addition to new business, and that is with regards to the Kentville Police Chief. And we have a recommendation from the Police Commission on appointment of the Chief of Police, and it is with regards to the Police Act, Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2004. And Councillor York, as the chair of the Police Commission, if you could take this, please.
Thank you. So the Board of Police Commissioners is recommending that Acting Chief Marty Smith be appointed to the role of Chief Officer of the Kentville Police Service.
And are you going to move?
So moved, yeah.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends to council the appointment of Acting Chief of Police Marty Smith as the Chief of Police of the Kentville Police Service. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend to council the appointment of Acting Chief of Police Martin Smith as the Chief Officer of the Kentville Police Services. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Woo-hoo! Don't go anywhere. All right, members of the public are invited to speak to council on any agenda item. You will be provided with 3 minutes to speak, and please provide your name and address prior to speaking, please.
I'm Sharon Keel, and I live on Alicia Boulevard. Reason I am here looking to speak to you tonight is regarding the financial statements. They were approved in August, put up on your website, and I've been going through them. As you know, I was quite concerned about legal expenses. And that particular component is part of the general government services. And because it's bundled in there, it's not broken out. And I wanted to see what else was included in that category, because that one in particular was over budget by 300%. So I did request a FOIPOP for that information, for a list of the components, as well as the budget amount, as well as the actuals for 2023, because it's, again, bundled. And I'm still working on that. I'm on FOIP 3. However, I will say that it's, in a lot of the way I worded it may not have been, so the jury's still out on that. But with the information that I have received, I came across a problem because I was going through the, as much as I could investigate. And when it came down to, like, one of the components of just that category, because that's the only thing that I've been looking at is the general government services. But in that one category, it comes down to council remuneration, council and the CAO's remuneration. And what is being reported in the actuals does not coincide with what is in the table on note 20, because in note 20 you actually have to spell out what councillors are paid, what the CAO is paid, what the mayor is paid, as well as all of the expenses that are associated with each person. I said, anyway, it doesn't match. It's not out by much, but it is out. It is not correct. So I've sent 2 emails to that, and I've not had any response. So to me, that, I'm sure it's probably just an oversight, that one just was simply not updated. But I'm looking for clarity. Like, you've got a citizen reporting to you that there looks like there's an error in the financial statements. These are your formal, finalized, approved statements. Just asking you to take a look at it and get it corrected. Either put a note up, just say, you know, like, or give me an explanation, because it might be a very legitimate explanation as to why there's a difference there. I just don't see it, and I don't see any note to it. And there lies the problem when you don't have notes. Anyway, thank you very much. That's all.
Before you go, Ms. Keogh, when you look at mine,
Yeah.
do mine coincide? Are they
No.
the same?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes,
Okay.
yours do, yes.
Then the reason is remuneration does not include health benefits. So I pay my own health benefits because I'm on Government of Canada, I'm on a Government of Canada
Okay,
plan.
okay.
So there are some councillors who have their own plan, and there are some who use the town plan. And that's not part of their remuneration, that is part of a benefits package. So that's why it looks different.
Okay, well, that doesn't necessarily, oh, all right, so when I add up,
I'm only gonna answer that one, please. That's why I asked you if mine coincided.
well, that would work for the remuneration, but
Remuneration.
the expenses are also wrong. Again,
So,
not by a lot, it's about $1,000 difference, you know, in total.
okay, so
It's wrong.
are you
Or
Okay.
I'm sorry, it
No,
appears to
no,
be.
I'm going by heart here. So there is a council expense line. If you look in our budget,
Mhm.
there's the mayors, you'll see each of the councilors, and then there's one called council. So,
Now, this is broken down on individual councilors. It's, there's a total in the financial statements itself. But that total, when you add up the deputy mayor and five councilors, you get a total.
right,
When you compare it to the table that's in note 20, this is expenses. And like, your expenses are like, it's not a budget amount, like you got $506 and $438. This is what's in your table. So when you take that and you add up to what it is, the total adds up to $10,593. But what is reported in your financial statements as the total for just those councilors is
because
$11,658.
they're counting that council line as well. So let's say we had a meeting in here and we brought coffee in. That wouldn't be charged to an individual councilor. That would be in charge to a council.
Fine, like, if that's the case, then that's great. That gives it, but there's nowhere does that explain that.
Okay,
And there's nowhere that you're showing where where that's bundled in, like, you know, how does somebody know that? Like, because the table itself, like, even if you add to the table, I'm just saying it just doesn't align.
right,
And
right.
it, you know, and if I'm looking at that, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong.
No, I understand what
I'm
you're saying.
just saying it's not aligning, and I'm asking you,
Right,
and I'm not getting an answer.
Well,
Other than
okay.
tonight, that was very helpful.
yes, okay,
Got it?
yeah, thank
All
you.
right.
My name's Gary Randall. I just heard a couple people around the table here speak tonight about the problem of the storm sewer. Not too far from me, but thankfully I'm uphill, but I do have my own water problems coming down the hill. A couple of people spoke about how the trees being cut down made a difference over so many years, and that may be what's coming back at us now. Somebody else spoke about the amount of development, how that contributes to the amount of water that comes down from the high end to the low end, and the low end apparently isn't able to accept it now. I think that kind of goes along with the bravery of the council a little while ago, turned down a development. And I spoke to one of the councilors here and said, you guys did a brave thing because the big storm happened after that. Just imagine if somebody had been up there bulldozing for foundations and so on, and we had all that mud come down the hill besides in those $1 million houses in their basements. So I think it was a good decision. And, you know, when you talk about the trees, and I hope I'm not out of order here, but the council, the council, actually, a letter came from the engineer signed by him that council's going to expropriate a bunch of land that belongs to Mr. Cousins that actually holds that water. And I guess I can ask the question, maybe you can't answer it. The Blomidon Natural Society came and took a look at that property, old growth forest, very little of it in town, happens to be on one of the highest parts of the topography here. And I'd just like to know, did anybody take time and read their, I think it was a 4-page letter that tells you how those forests actually hold the water, because they're their own natural settling ponds to hold the water. They have the moss that holds the water. They have the roots that keep the gorge from getting deeper, those types of things. And I would hope that some of you, if you haven't read it, you would read it. A volunteer put that together, but a very well educated bunch of volunteers contributed to that letter. And it may be a bit of an answer to the problem that we have going on here when we're talking about taking more forest out. Maybe we should take a step back and say, we've got enough problems as it is now. So I'm kind of hoping that the letter that gave 2 options to Mr. Cousins, number 1, settle, sell your land. Number two, we will expropriate your land, has been reconsidered. And if you people voted to expropriate his land, then I'm hoping someday I'm going to hear it not to expropriate his land, but go around it. And we did have the engineer up there. I'm sad that he left because I don't want to say something that I interpreted differently, but he did come up and he talked about surveying the land, so we would all be able to see exactly where you're going to put a road through that old growth forest. I don't think that's happened yet. And we do, I think I can speak for Ron here, with Ron, we'd welcome any of you to come up and see how that keeps the water in the land so it doesn't come down to Main Street, which obviously, when they built Main Street and the piping, they didn't predict the 100-year storm was going to happen 2 or 3 months in a row. So, Sandra, I agree with you. Mayor Snow, excuse me.
No, that's fine.
I think a nice deep hole would be nice there to catch some of those rocks. The gorge is doing its thing. I walked up there. It's getting deeper and deeper and deeper to handle that water so it doesn't flood out over everybody. But the catch is, we have built a bunch of properties down below, and we're trying to put it through a big pipe into a small pipe, apparently, which the only way to fix that, I'm a plumber, is to start at the bottom and work your way back up the hill. No matter what you do at the top of the hill, the bottom of the hill can't handle it. That pipe has got to be made bigger, excuse me.
You've overrun your 3 minutes, Gary.
Okay, good.
Wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you.
Just, who's going to represent council when we have this appeal process? Mr. Bryson has appealed to the Utilities Review Board. He's been granted an appeal, so I expect they must say he has grounds. It wasn't a unanimous vote by the town of Kentville to actually stop that rezoning. So who from the town is representing the town in that appeal process? And I would expect you'll have to represent, as in you are speaking against the development. Does anybody know who's representing the town?
Yes, we do have legal advice, and that will be discussed this evening
Okay.
in camera after this, and then we'll come out and make a motion. So there will be,
Okay, so we'll hear.
there will be public detail at some point here, but not right now.
Tonight? Later tonight, though? or-
Later tonight.
Okay, I'll sit down. Thanks.
It won't be screened, and you won't be, I mean, you'll have to sit outside and wait. Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Okay.
And council?
Oh, I'll make mine short. My name's Ron Cousins. I read in the paper, just found out tonight, that Montreal and Toronto are, because of the global warming and the more water and everything else, they're making what they call sponge gardens. In order to do so, they're planting trees and shrubs to hold the water, which is kind of like what we already got now. That's all.
Thank you. All right, there being no further business, I would call for adjournment, and the time is 9:06. No, don't need a motion, we finished the business on the agenda. So council, we're gonna come back to a special meeting of council, so if you need to do a biological. Good evening. This special council meeting is called to ratify time-sensitive resolutions. The meeting is being conducted in council chambers and is being live-streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel. The meeting is called to order. The chair notes that all members of council are present and we have quorum. As this is a special meeting of council, the agenda items are circulated as chief of police and in-camera land. If I could have a motion to accept the proposed agenda. Councillor Gerard, thank you. Deputy Mayor for the second. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we have a recommendation from CAC that council approve the appointment of acting Chief of Police Martin Smith as the Chief Officer of the Kentville Police Services. Someone could move that, please. Councillor York, and a second. Councillor Gerard, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the appointment of acting Chief of Police Martin Smith as the Chief Officer of the Kentville Police Services. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the appointment of acting Chief of Police Martin Smith as the Chief Officer of the Kentville Police Services. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Woo-hoo! Yes, please, please. The podium is yours.
Obviously, I won't get into a speech because hopefully there'll be something down the road, but because I've missed the last two for COVID. But I can't thank you enough for having the confidence in me to fulfill this position, and I look forward to the next many years because I'm very young, so not 25, but I can't thank you enough, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Am I free to go?
Pardon?
Am I free to go?
You don't have acting chief epaulets on, do you? You
I
have
don't,
real
no.
chief epaulets?
No, just deputy chief.
Okay, you better put the real epaulets on.
Yes.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.
And your uniform, get your uniform fixed, because we got November 11th coming up and you're gonna need it. There'll be inspection. All right, now the council has one item concerning land which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda item. Paula, thank you. And for second, Jillian? Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And the time is 9:19. Holy moly.